Would you please stand? Good evening and welcome to this ordinary meeting of Hunters Hill Council, number 4470. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, and I pay my respect to their elders past and present.
We thank you, Lord, for the honour of being called by our fellow citizens to this office of honour and trust. Give us grace diligently and honourably, free from private interest or prejudice, to discharge the duties entrusted to us, to the common good and as in your sight, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Please have a seat. So again, welcome everybody. We don't seem to have any apologies this evening. Are there any declarations of interest? So I'll move to the confirmation of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes, those of the meeting of 4468, 23rd of September. Move Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Miles. Any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. We have a second meeting, which was an extraordinary meeting on the 21st of October, 4469. Move Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Any discussion, councillors? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you very much. So the first item we have is, I believe, 3.1. And we have no speakers for 3.1. So 3.1, Councillor Collins.
Okay, so look, this is a pretty straightforward motion.
You're moving the motion, do you have a
I'm
second?
moving, yes, sorry.
Second? Councillor Miles, thank you, Councillor Collins.
Yeah, very straightforward motion. This is simply to, as it says, engage with T Corp to discuss funding options for our infrastructure backlog. And part of the reason we've actually just had a briefing about this, partly about potentially engaging with T Corp about this. The main reason why we need to do this as a policy of council is because even though it may be the case that the General Manager and staff are looking at this as an option, as councillors we have a responsibility to make sure that we have adopted a policy and we are doing our job of governance. At the moment, for whatever reason, the infrastructure backlog has increased significantly. It is our objective, it's our role to hold management to account and make sure that we are providing that governance oversight. This says to the community and potentially to the state government, because we could very well be issued with a performance improvement order if we don't show that we at least have a plan and that we are looking at our options and we are engaging with the right people to potentially fund it. This isn't an agreement to fund it. This isn't an agreement to take out a loan. This is simply an intention to explore our options for funding the infrastructure backlog. Without this, we don't have anything officially on record of council addressing the issue that we actually don't have the cash to fund this backlog. And so technically not doing the job we were engaged to do. So,
Thank you, Councillor.
that's it.
Do we have anybody wishing to speak against the motion? Councillor Williams?
Not to speak against, well, yeah, okay, to speak against the motion. We've just had a briefing from the General Manager about her vision and her direction, and part of that discussion was about approaching T Corp. But an important point that she made, the General Manager made, was we need to base our decisions on evidence. We need an evidence-based approach to what we're doing. And this is putting the cart before the horse. We've got to find out and quantify what the dimension of any need is, what is the backlog, where is the problems, the scale of it. And we're doing that through our asset assessment. The Engineers Department has just done an extensive review of all our roads with electronic equipment. And at the last meeting we were told they're now doing the footpaths as well. Those two pieces of work will inform us as to what we're dealing with in terms of quantity, how we prioritise the actions that come out of that investigations. And at that point, it's appropriate to talk about how we're going to finance it. Sure, T Corp is one option to doing that. We've got a range of other options available to council, as indicated by the General Manager, in providing a forward vision and a forward thinking in a way that we can actually deal with issues that we need to. So, to me, this is a bit premature. We need to be looking at the facts and have an evidence-based position. And the staff are already, I assume, from what that discussion was earlier on this evening, talking with T Corp and looking at other options in terms of how they may recommend back to council. And I would like the staff, through the General Manager, to be giving us a very clear recommendation as to how we move forward on these issues. Because I'm not convinced that we're facing a disastrous position here. I want to see the evidence before I make those sort of assertions. Because I think council does have a plan. The General Manager certainly has the skills to move us forward in a stepwise and process-driven and evidence-based outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Councillor Miles.
Mr Mayor, we're going to have a motion following this one, 3.2, in relation to Reeby Road. Now, the reason that we haven't fixed this problem in the past is because we have a problem funding our maintenance, and we have a problem funding new infrastructure. Something that came up very clearly in the last set of books sent to audit in Special Schedule 7 is that we have a large and increasing infrastructure backlog. Now, the minutiae of that will be delved into through the new asset management system, I have no doubt. We also have a schedule of works that need to be done. And that's just, the forward log of things that need doing. It seems to me, at a time when interests are at record lows and T Corp are offering loans at 10 years at 1.9% and at 20 years at 2.5%, to borrow $10 million or $5 million at a time, whatever that may be, for $10 million, that's circa 200 grand worth of interest. Now that's a seriously good deal to lock Huntersville into. We're not even locking ourselves into that deal. All that we're saying is that we should have that engagement with T Corp, as some of us did when we went to the local government conference a couple of weeks ago, to see what sort of rates and offers they can come to us with. The specifics of what the infrastructure backlog looks like, our maintenance schedule as it is fairly clear. What the infrastructure backlog is going to become more clear as time comes on, but it is very, it's stark that we are going to have to spend more on our infrastructure. And having that discussion with T Corp to see what they could fund for us seems like a very logical solution to me.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against the motion? For the motion? Councillor McLaughlin.
I'm going to speak for part one of the motion, and I've just got a question in relation to part two that will help form my ultimate decision. As a council, we've already discussed the idea of funding options around this T Corp loan arrangement quite a lot. So there's nothing earth-shattering about that. It's really just, if anything, just a direction to the council that it's already doing. Point two, I just have a question around the timetable that Councillor Collins has put in place, and through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager. It's my understanding that the asset review is taking place at the moment, and that you are working towards getting back to council with a full and comprehensive picture by February or March of next year.
Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, yes, we'll be auditing our footpath in the next month. We'll then look at our marine assets and buildings early in the next year, hoping for a report by late February or March in the timeframe.
So just a follow-up question then, is this November deadline feasible if that's the case? You've already got the program. We actually want a full, as Councillor Williams has said, a full and comprehensive review. Just wondering, Councillor Collins, if you might consider just waiting for that before.
Sure, if I can answer that question, or
Yes, you can.
speak to that part. Or?
No, not speak to it, just answer the question. Just answer
Would
the
you
question.
agree to an amendment just to receiving a full and comprehensive review in February?
Yeah, I'm happy to change the motion slightly. The only
Okay. Let's not just speak to it just at the moment.
okay.
So the answer is yes, willing to make some considerations. And
Considerations.
We'll come back
On that basis, I will be supporting the motion.
Okay. Anybody wishing to speak against? Well, perhaps this is a time. Perhaps you could suggest an amendment to that motion, Councillor Mott.
Okay. What I might suggest is that with number 2. Because there is going to be a full report of everything, marine assets and all that, but we do have the data being collected for the roads. We could potentially start moving on some of these things. We don't have to wait till we have every single thing. But what I'd be happy to do is to maybe just after November, just cross everything out after November. I would like a briefing in November just on a general finance, how this actually works for those self-declared non-financial persons. Just to explain how it would work, how an interest rate would work, repayments, 30 years, fixed, and what our sort of options, perhaps just to educate councillors on how going forward. So we don't just wait till February to do everything. So would that be amenable to you? Okay, everything after November.
Okay.
To consider the option. Yeah.
I think it's just regarding funding options.
Yeah, just so we can, and how that would play out, how repayments would be made and funded and whatnot.
Anybody wishing to? So we've got Councillor Williams.
Ask a question, or suggest an amendment to number 2. Bring back options. I think
we've got an amendment. We're going back to the original motion amendment. So it's been amended. So we've got to check to see that the seconder agrees to accept the amendment to the motion. And so I would think that he gets an opportunity to speak to it. So I think, do you feel you've spoken to it sufficiently, Councillor Collins?
Yeah, I might just say bring back funding options to a councillor briefing.
All right, thank you. Councillor Williams.
No, Mr Mayor, that answers my question, because options wasn't clear as to what options we were talking about. Funding options is what I think.
So we're clear now?
Thank you very much. So anybody wishing to speak against? For? I'd like to speak for it. I think this captures many of the things we're already talking about. I think to get it moving quickly and get it on the table as early as we can is good, knowing that some of the things won't be completed till early in the new year. So I'm in support of this motion. Councillor Collins, right reply.
I don't think I need it, but thank you.
All right, so councillors, the amendment is there on the screen at the moment. Is that correct, Councillor Collins?
Yeah, that's. Oh, one still. Oh, yeah.
So two comes
goes
out.
up. Yeah, if you switch those 2s over, that would. Yeah, one's got to go in there as well. Yes.
The 2 comes in, basically.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Thank you. I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? It's unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Collins. We have item 3.2, a motion related to Reby Road, and we have some speakers for this, I believe. I think we have Mr. Daniel Strasberg. Mr. Strasberg, please come and address us. And you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, thank you. Dear Mayor, councillors and council staff, tonight I'm not speaking to you as a life member of the PNC Association, nor as a Deputy Mayor of Lane Cove Council, but as a parent of a Year 9 student at Huntersville High School. Councillors, it is time now for action and not words as you address and fix the dangerous and hazardous conditions of Reedy Road, Hunters Hill. With an ever-growing school population and increasing traffic in the area, the time has come to approve the installation of this footpath. It is excusable and depressing that this important piece of infrastructure has been woefully neglected for so many years. It is shameful that the state and federal members are not here tonight to grant additional funding to council to fix this obvious problem that is right here in their very own backyards. And it's disappointing and it's terribly sad that the PNC have to come to council to plead to have this footpath built rather than it just happening. The Traffic Committee's report states that the RMS data does not show any recorded car pedestrian accidents in this location. As a group of councillors sitting here, please remember you are mothers and you are fathers and you are daughters and sons and you are sisters and brothers. Please don't make one of our children the child that changes this statistic. Please, none of you want to be the one to address the community and say this council's lack of action resulted in one of our children paying the highest price. Tonight is your turn to show the community of Hunters Hill and the parents of Hunters Hill High School that you are leaders, you are role models, and you will support this motion for the immediate installation of the Reedy Road footpath. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Strasbourg. Please stay with us just for a moment. Thank you. Councillor, are there any questions of Mr. Strasbourg? Councillor Williams.
I was just wondering, in discussions we've had with the school and previous presentations we've had, what do you see as the school's obligation to instruct and educate the children to be safe on the roads? Because
Well, since there has been no incidents, obviously the school's doing their job. There's no recorded.
they're still walking down the centre, and if we put a footpath there, then the children will still probably walk across.
Councillor, if I may, it's really not a debate, it's just an opportunity for you to ask the presenter about his question.
Sure.
The children would walk on a footpath. There's a safe way to do it, they'll do it. There's groups of them that can walk safely down through, and there's a pedestrian crossing from one side to the other, and they'll follow the path. They're following a natural line from buses that drop them at the top. There's no other option but apart from to cross one road and to cross another road, and that top corner is quite dangerous with cars zipping around going left and heading down. So if you build it and you do it properly, you will encourage them to walk down the way they should be, which they're doing potentially now, not as well as they should, but they are doing that.
Councillors, any further questions, Mr. Strasbourg? Thanks for joining us. Thanks for your input.
Thank you.
So, no further speakers. So we have a... I'm sorry, we do. 1 moment. I'm sorry, Ms. Crompton. Welcome.
My name's Jacqueline Crompton. I am actually the appointed speaker for the Hunters Hill High School PNC. My presentation does run to just over 4 minutes, so I will beg for an extension in advance if I may, but I will not be excessive. I'm going to start by saying last week Councillor McLaughlin made a post on social media quoting a visiting councillor from Dallas-Fort Worth whose name was Betsy Price, and she told ABC Radio that councils are where you go to when you want to get things done in and around your world. And I hardly agree with that sentiment. And I take it as an encouraging statement from you that you would post something like that. And I'm here to tell you that Hunters Hill High School is here to get something done tonight. And in the scheme of things, our ambition is pretty humble. We want something that every other school in the Hunters Hill municipality already has. A well-designed, connected footpath, one that ensures the safety of our students and pedestrians on Ryby Road. Our school community has been trying for 18 months with this council to get this done, and there is real frustration in the school community that it has taken this long. And I can tell you that council has driven more than one parent to tears out of frustration as a result of this issue. And that's because there can be no higher priority than children's safety. I can also tell you that there are many of your constituents in the community on the peninsula who are not associated with Hunters Hill High School, who have expressed incredulity that it has taken this long to achieve something that seems so obvious and so necessary. To quote one of my friends, who is a very active citizen of the peninsula, he said, "I don't understand why it's even a matter for discussion." In fact, he messaged me this morning to wish me luck for this evening's presentation, and his message also stated, "I was coming off the peninsula this morning and watched in horror as kids spilled across the road, cars turning into them. It's just crazy, 4 exclamation marks." It's not a stretch to tell you that this is what your constituents think. That said, at Hunters Hill High School, we do understand that processes can take time. And a good thing about a properly constituted process, however frustrating it can be, is that council can confidently say at the end of it that the right decision will have been validated by its process. Council has adopted a lengthy and thorough process, and we've been very pleased to participate in it. That process has now finished. There need be no further deliberation, no further investigation, and no further consultation. It is now time for a decision. The Traffic Committee has considered the options, the technical advice, and the community feedback received. They saw the photos that irrefutably illustrate the serious and dangerous conflicts that occur daily between cars and children on Ryby Road. That committee has made a very specific recommendation to Council that a footpath be installed along the western side of Ryby Road and curb widening be undertaken as per Concept 3 of Council's consultant report. This is the right decision. Widen the curb, build the footpath, and design it properly for the long-term needs of our school, which is now thriving and growing. We note with profound disappointment at Hunters Hill High School that the committee's recommendation was not unanimously made. And we understand that the only member of the Traffic Committee to vote against that recommendation was Council, despite strong support from the RMS and the local police. Mr Mayor, I think the parents of Hunters Hill High School can be forgiven for having trouble reconciling the rhetoric you delivered in public and the vote you made in private. Tonight, we urge Council to stop holding out on us. We urge Council to respect and adopt the recommendation made by your own Traffic Committee. Notwithstanding the discussion we've just witnessed earlier this evening, the Mayor has been quoted, has identified this week in public Hunters Hill Council as being in the top 10 councils in New South Wales for cash holdings. And in September, the Mayor told me and other school community representatives that this question is not a question of money and that the money can always be found. That's great. We think there is nothing left to wait for. We respectfully advise Hunters Hill Council that there is only one decision that can be made in good conscience tonight, and that is to adopt the motion put by Councillors Ben Collins and Zach Niles. We suggest that the exact wording of the motion be amended to fully reflect the Traffic Committee recommendation that the curb be widened and a footpath built. We also suggest that the wording be amended to require that the footpath be designed according to an expert assessment of the capacity needs, which was flagged in your consultant's report. The parents of Hunters Hill High School very sincerely thank...
I've given you an extra couple of minutes.
Yeah, that's
You're heading for 6 minutes, so...
the parents of Hunters Hill...
Councillor Williams, Councillor Miles, everybody in agreement?
Thank you.
Carried.
The parents of Hunters Hill High School sincerely thank Councillor Collins and Councillor Miles for their genuine and meaningful support of improved student pedestrian safety and for making sure that this issue got on tonight's council agenda. We really thank you. Councillors, in conclusion, please do the right thing. Just like Betsy Price said, we came to you to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. Please stay with us for a moment. Yes. Councillors, are there any questions? Councillor Miles.
Sorry, the two amendments that you were suggesting is that the curb be widened and the footpath built, the specific
recommendation. So the recommendation from the Traffic Committee was that the footpath be built and curb widening, so the curb widening is not reflected in the motion as drafted, and also that it be designed based on a proper assessment of the capacity needs. So if you're going to do it properly. And the capacity assessment was something that was flagged in your consultant's report, that they had not been asked to do an assessment of the capacity needs of the footpaths.
Any further questions, councillors? Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin, do you have a query?
Oh, I just had a query. It just goes to the...
just one more.
Yes, no. Sorry, it just goes to the minutes of the meeting, just to clear up what you're actually wanting. The minutes of the local area traffic committee, they also talked about putting the blisters in as well. Is that right? Or...
I think any of the additional measures that are mentioned, we're in favour of. We don't take any issue of them. The previous council position has been to replace this fundamental infrastructure with those additional measures, and I think they're fantastic supplementary supplementary measures, and we're completely in favour of any additional supplementary measures, including student education, that the council wishes to add. But this is the core solution to this problem, and I think we're all very clear on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So the 3.2, move Councillor Collins, second Councillor Miles. Councillor Collins.
Probably with those suggestions, if we can. So with curb widening.
After footpath?
Yeah, I think so. Footpath construction. Yeah, with widening in time for the. I'm not too concerned about the how you want to word it, but you get the gist of it.
Councillor Collins,
Yes.
talk about line marking.
Oh yeah. Okay. Where would that be? On the. Sorry.
Is that everything?
I think that's about right.
Councillor Miles? Councillor Collins? Councillor Collins?
Yeah.
Perhaps we could insert that item of recommendation, which is on page 15.
Yeah, that looks fine. Yep. Add the the markings as well.
Councillor Collins, your speech.
Sure. Sorry. Look, I'll be brief because I think everything was covered by Declan's report, and I thank you for that report. I might just briefly say that, just reiterate that really the safest option for these kids is to have that footpath built. We can do the blistering and whatnot, but I ideally would like them to see come from the overpass and go straight down the road, the footpath, stay off the road and then cross down, further down Ruby Road. That's the safest option, and I think that's the only option that's going to prevent an accident from happening. And look, all the experts agree that's the safest option. We have the money to do it, so therefore we have the moral obligation to see this through and get this done. So I might just leave it there for now.
Thank you. Just wait a moment until we get it, until we capture it. Just make sure we get it right.
Sure.
Yep.
It's just the recommendation.
It picks up the recommendations. So, Councillor Collins, could you just look through that, just to make sure we've captured everything, please?
It's the bottom one? Or?
It is.
Yes, I think that's...
Thank you.
That's fine.
I just have a question to the General Manager, if I may. Is it possible to design, quote and build that before the end of January?
Through
Mr. Mayor, we would have to carry out service location, detailed design, and then because of the cost of the works, potentially go to public tender. So it's going to be quite a difficult task because of Christmas closure. Just because the public tender will take its time.
So,
Mr. Mayor, what I would suggest is we can come back with a program that shows the designs with the service, the time it will take to locate the services, the design work, and then the program to go to tender and come back.
What's the tender limit for?
At the moment, it's 150. We're looking to come back to council with an adjustment to the policy to bring it in line with the changes that the Local Government Act have had to take it to 250, but our current policy is 150.
And we can leave that in as is then, and then you come back and...
We'd come back with a program through Mr. Mayor.
so just to check, this says the work to the footpath constructed in time for, is that the end of January, the start of the school year?
Yes.
So I think we've just heard it can't be done. by
No,
then.
it said that wasn't what was said at all. It said it will be tough, and the motion says to work to have the footpath done by then.
Right, so if I may, just again, I'll ask the General Manager, is it possible to have a footpath? We need to go through that process. Is it possible to have it ready by the end of January?
Based on the process we need to follow, particularly around tender requirements, it's not going to be possible to have the design work go out to tender and then have a contractor engaged to have the work there in February. What we can do is come back to you with a program that sets that out.
So if it's impossible.
Not saying it's impossible, but we'd need to work out the program. But bearing in mind that tenders are advertised for 21 days, they need to be reported back to council to be accepted by council, and then the contractor needs to be engaged and available. And as the director said, there's the Christmas, New Year close down period. So it depends on the successful contractor and whether they're available in that period.
Will council be able to attempt to have the footpath constructed by then?
Work through Mr. Mayor,
work
towards that.
Okay, so that's the motion says work to have the footpath. That doesn't say it has to be done, but we would that says that we would work towards it, and if that's somehow not possible, then we obviously get a report back to explain why it's not. So
All right, thanks for answering the question. Is anybody wishing to speak against the motion?
I don't wish to speak against it, but if I could suggest a couple of amendments to be realistic with the process involved. I mean, clearly it's not going to happen with the fact that the tender has to be brought back to council for approval. So rather than the point 2 we have, I'd suggest that to allow us to get started with it, would point 2 be proceed with design and costing of the proposed works.
You're foreshadowing this
that's not.
amendment?
Yes, I'm foreshadowing this.
Foreshadowing, okay.
I'm putting an amendment forward if someone wishes to second what I've proposed.
So are you suggesting an amendment, or are you foreshadowing it in case
I would suggest the amendment.
Right, thank you.
Let's
capture your amendment.
Okay. It is part of it is in text already available to staff.
What about councillors?
Hold on, councillor. Please go ahead.
So I suggest that, given that point 2 is a bit unrealistic, that point 2 becomes that we proceed with the design and costing of the proposed works. The other thing I'm a little bit concerned about with the motion is that 4 it just simply makes a bald statement that the funds have to come out of council's unrestricted cash reserves. I think there is, and I won't go into it now, but I mean I think a very significant reason as to why the state should be contributing to it. So at point 4, I'd suggest that funds be sought from sources external to council to perform the proposed works. And 5. Because at the end of the day, we have quite a dangerous environment for pedestrians travelling all the way from the Huntersville village regardless of whether they're going to Huntersville High School, Huntersville Primary School, or to any residences further down the peninsula, or to catch a Woolwich bus or whatever. There is quite a dangerous environment there. So what I would propose additionally, a point 5, that councils seek a commitment from the state government to resolve safety issues for pedestrians moving between the Huntersville Village and schools and residences east of Burns Bay Road before commencing on the works on Ruby Road.
I'll wait till we capture it. Have we captured that completely, Councillor Sanderson?
No, not yet. I did give a handwritten version to a minute taker earlier.
Has that captured your
No, it
words?
hasn't.
What would you like to see changed?
Well, it says that councils seek a commitment from state government to resolve safety issues for pedestrians moving between the Huntersville Village and schools and residences to the east of Burns Bay Road before commencement of works on Ruby Road.
Does that capture it completely?
It does, Mr Mayor.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Cresswell. Thank you, Councillor. Would you like to speak to your proposed amendment?
Yes, Mr Mayor. I think I'm the only councillor who attended Huntersville High School. I actually watched it being built at the age of 4. I have a very good, in fact I'm sure I'd have a better understanding of the history than anyone else in this room. The problems that exist there are largely of the state government's making. The school was built or was opened in 1958. The access to it at that time was from Nimber Street and the Avenue, which at that time went right out to Joubert Street. The expressway went through in the early 60s, which cut off that road, and basically the state government left that road in the condition it is at the present time. When I was a student at that school, I think I was in 5th form in 1970, and that's when the school population actually peaked. It was about 1,060 as I recall. At that point in time, basically there was a huge number of students who went to school by bicycle, many walked, but everyone that caught public transport was dropped in the avenue and didn't need to cross the road anywhere. Since then, there was an attempt to close the school. I was involved very strongly in saving the school at that time. And what came out of that was that with the school closures, bus services were cut because the school population got down to the 400s at that time. And as a result, the catchment became broader and students were travelling in more diverse ways. As a result of state government action through the closure of schools, it has meant that, it's been the actions of state government that has forced students to a greater extent to use the paths that are there. So I think it's perfectly reasonable that we seek state government funding for this proposal. Equally, there are significant dangers, and I do this myself. If you go along the northern side of the of the overpass. You've got to cross wide stretches where people don't give indications, and I'm sure school students have problems with that too. It would be nice to get a complete fix, and I think we need to put a little bit of pressure on the state government to provide these fixes. So that is my reason for these proposed amendments.
Right, thank you. Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? Councillor Miles.
There's no point in there. I understand going to state government and looking for funds when it comes to funding these projects, but to suggest that a building of a footpath is somehow the responsibility of the state government instead of Hunters Hill Council is blatantly ridiculous. It is one of the most ridiculous things I've heard in this chamber. We have the opportunity not to look at the overpass, not to look at a wider problem. We have a pedestrian access management plan already that we haven't enforced or done anything on. We are asking to build a footpath. It is not complex. It is right here. We can do it tonight. We're trying to work to a program that we have jointly worked out with the PNC to try and get this thing done before the 2020 school year begins. Now, cap in hand, as we always do, turning up to state government saying, this is your fault, you need to fund it, is blatantly ridiculous. This is a footpath. If this isn't in our purview, then what is? This is the fundamental thing that we are supposed to be delivering to the people of Hunters Hill, and for anyone to suggest that this is an issue that is removed from us is blatantly ridiculous. I've heard very many things said in this chamber that I don't agree with, but that is a doozy. Now, the motion that you put forward, the amendments that you're putting forward, a copy has been given to Councillor McLaughlin, a copy has been given to Councillor Crassoy, I assume a copy has been given to the Mayor, no copy has been given to Councillor Collins or myself. I'm not sure why, but I'm not going to consider these options. It's going to slow down what is a very, very simple issue. Build the bloody footpath.
I don't have a copy, Councillor Miles. Anybody wishing to speak for the amendment? Councillor Crassoy.
Thank you. Though I would say that I supported the amendment before Councillor Sanderson had spoken to it, and I don't agree with it laying the blame on the feet of the state government. So I just want to remove myself from that part of the amendment. The reason I support the amendment is because I think this is a great opportunity to do the job right. I think it's going to be expensive, and 3 state government representatives voted to have council do it. But what the amendment actually says isn't about the footpath. What the amendment says is that we seek a commitment, from the state government to resolve the safety issues for pedestrians moving between the Hunters Hill Village and the peninsula. Before you go ahead. And I think that pushes that imperative onto the state government. So 3 state government representatives...
Could you address your comments to the councillors, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. 3 state government representatives are endorsing and supporting our council to build a footpath and not considering the safety of the overpass, which has been an agenda that council has been pushing for at least 8 years, but actually a lot longer, as we all know. So I don't understand why they would build a nice, safe footpath, or why they would let us build a nice, safe footpath that no one can get to safely. It doesn't make sense. So there's a really good opportunity, because the state government keep pushing this one aside. There's a good opportunity here to say, you've supported us to build this footpath. What we want you to do is step up and do your bit, which is make it safe for people to get to it. I don't think it's an unreasonable ask. It's certainly equitable for all of the residents and all of the students from all of the schools who go on and off our peninsula. We don't mind if it doesn't have blisters at the top. We just want a footpath to our school. Well, the blisters actually get seniors and students from every other school in the area accessing the peninsula safely across the top of the road. If we build that footpath, we want blisters so that people can cross it safely. Council needs to invest wisely in this piece of infrastructure. It needs to be done in a timely fashion, but not rushed, and we need the state support to make it safe for people to get there. So just to be clear, the amendment doesn't say ask the state to pay for the footpath. The amendment says ask the state to make it safe. Where does it say that?
Point 4.
Councillors, Councillor Crasso, you have the floor. Please continue. Councillor Crasso, you have the floor. Continue.
I'm talking to point 5, aren't I?
Yeah. Point 4 is.
Oh, so how do we fix that on it?
It's 6.
Leave it how it
Do you
is.
have-
It's just 6. All right, that's all I want to
Councillor
say.
Crasso, do you have anything further?
No,
to add?
just that on point
Right.
5, but also, Mr. Mayor, if I can foreshadow on point 3, adding just 6 words, where it says that both Hunters Hill High School and Hunters Hill Public School have a biannual safety audit. I would just like to add something that I've been asking for from the previous General Manager and since I came onto council, which is actually that we have a safety audit on a regular basis of all of our local schools and village precincts where pedestrians are highly active.
All right, we'll take that as a foreshadow.
I'm going to
motion.
foreshadow adding that into the motion.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody wishing to speak against?
Yes.
Councillor Collins.
Just
Could I just check, councillors, are you happy to have the
Media.
media, yes.
recorded by the media?
Yes.
Or should they rely on the stream that we make?
I'm quite happy
Councillors?
for it to be transparent.
Councillors?
It's live streamed anyway.
You're all happy to have it recorded by, thank you, Governor.
Let's get some
Sorry,
good
I don't
angles.
already have from.
Just on Councillor Crassoy's discussion there, to suggest that we should wait and threaten the state government that we won't do this unless they do something else, well, good luck with that. Nothing will ever get done. They just won't do it. Now, the issue up at the overpass is something else that is on the P&C's agenda. We like to tackle these things as they come. We could do a whole precinct-wide, every school. Right now, this is for a small area, and we're going to deal with that first. We're going to get those done, and then we'll move on to other areas. I've no issue if you want to number 3, increase it to all the other schools. I've no issue with that, but really, all Councillor Sanderson's amendment here is trying to tie bureaucratic knots into this motion so it doesn't get done. The reason why he saw it being built is because he could look outside his bedroom window and see it. It is completely inappropriate that you were even in this discussion. It is a conflict. It is not right. And I'm furious that you would be sitting here trying to stop this from happening when it's in your own street.
Councillor,
His own street.
Councillor, you've gone beyond debate, far beyond debate.
Right.
I'd ask you to stop there.
I'll leave it there then. Now, in terms of changing it, proceed with design and costing, that means we don't decide to do it. That just kicks the can down the road. So, anything we can do to stop an actual decision being made, yeah, that's what that's going to do. Funds, getting it from somewhere else, absolutely. Try the state
Councillor,
government.
you've exhausted your 5 minutes.
5 minutes?
Move to extend. Councillor Miles?
I'm nearly finished.
No, you've exceeded your 5 minutes. So
Move to extend?
move to extend. Councillors, you agree to have extended?
No one wants to extend it, so Phil Jenkin gets 2 extensions and I don't get 1.
Okay, thank you.
Because
Thank
others
you,
want to
Councillor.
speak after speech.
Thank you, Councillor. So,
We know who runs the show here.
anybody wishing to speak for the motion, against the motion? Councillor
The amendment.
McLaughlin. The amendment? Yep, the amendment.
Yes, I'll speak against the amendment, but I will foreshadow some very simple changes to the original motion. The reason I'm speaking against the amendment is that funds be sought from sources external to council to perform the proposed works. I just think that it is I don't have any faith in the state government stumping up any money whatsoever for this road, and this has been going on for 18 months, and I'm absolutely sure the local member is more than aware of this, and if there was ever going to be any money available for this, it would have been available before this. And it is a local issue. I think we have a role to play in it, so I don't agree with that amendment. I think the amendment to point 5 could be brought as a separate motion.
So you're foreshadowing that? given that this fails?
I'm not foreshadowing that. I'm just suggesting that might be something that Councillor Sanderson might like to do. I have a couple of amendments that I'd like to foreshadow to the original motion, which is that point 2 becomes work to have the footpath constructed as soon as practicable. That works in with the timetable, I think, that is Council's.
Could we deal with these after we've dealt with the amendment? Would that be right?
Yeah, that's okay, but I just wanted to get them on the floor.
You have some foreshadowed amendments, so
yeah.
we'll come back to the detail of those,
yeah. Okay.
If that's all right. So we're back to the original motion. So anybody wishing to speak for the amendment? Be patient, Councillor Collins. Anybody wishing to speak for the amendment? Against the amendment? I'd like to speak against the amendment. I think it complicates things unnecessarily. I think we do have a major problem on the overpass we need to deal with separately. And could I suggest you bring that back to Council at another time? I think it's a big issue. It's a very dangerous issue. And it's something we have taken up on numerous occasions with RMS. We haven't got a solution to it. In fact, it was an important issue for the whole last council, and it was raised by one of the councillors, Councillor Meredith Shield, for 5 years over and over again. We didn't get a resolution. So it is an important issue. Could I suggest you bring that back? So if there are no further speakers, you have right of reply on your amendment. All right, I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? Against? That's lost. Thank you. Back to your foreshadowed amendments, or should we go back to the motion, and then if that fails, we'll come to your foreshadowed amendments. Is that all right with you? That's what we need to do.
Just point of order, Mr. Mayor, I had foreshadowed those few words as well, which I think Councillor Collins was happy to accept.
Which words was that?
About safety audit.
Oh, look.
So the amendment's lost, so we can get rid of the amendment, I think. So what are the words you'd like to add to the original motion?
Was just in point 3.
Just before we...
No, you can't. Sorry,
well,
she's got the floor. Please stand up. Please stand up. Councillor Cresswell, please stand up.
Can we just... I think it saves everyone time if I just explain.
Councillor Cresswell, could you please stand up and tell us what the amendment you want is? What your foreshadow?
Mr Mayor, I was just suggesting that at point number 3, that we continue to monitor pedestrian activity of students in all our school and village precincts with high pedestrian activity.
So are you asking Councillor Collins if he'll add that into his motion?
I was.
Okay, Councillor Collins.
Thank you. I certainly don't have any problem adding it. I think it may even be, I think that may even be a separate motion to actually pull number 3 out. Would that make it easier for you, General Manager, through Ms. Ahmed? If we bring it back to a separate, or
yep.
I just don't want it to become too wide.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I think it would be better just to contain this notice around the school safety.
So, Councillor Collins, you'd prefer not to put that in there?
That was one of my
And we'll have a...
So, let's bring the rest of the schools back to So
do you prefer not to have that in?
If that's okay, but I want it done.
It's
but
up to you.
Not in this motion.
It's up to you.
I don't want it in here.
All right.
Ideally,
good.
If it means we're going to lose the whole thing,
that's up to you.
It's not up.
It's up to you.
Is that okay with you? Okay, great.
All right. So let's look at the original motion again, just so we're all clear. Could we bring up Councillor Collins' motion? We have an amendment which has not been passed, was lost, so we're back to this.
And I foreshadowed some amendments.
All right, so if this is lost, then we'll come back to your foreshadowed amendments.
That's, you've got to propose an
We'd
amendment.
like to put them
Should
now.
I please propose an amendment
You can?
to the original motion?
Yes?
Thank you, sorry. It's probably.
That is, oh, that's the wrong one. Point 1, as is. Point 2 would be work to have the footpath constructed as soon as practicable. Point 3 would be, and this might help everyone, work with the local police to continue to monitor pedestrian activity of students for both Hunters Hill High School and Hunters Hill Public School, full stop. But I'm equally happy to include the biannual safety audit. I just think every 6 months is probably a bit too much. I think you just need to have the police monitoring it on a regular basis. And point 4, I'm not actually sure how to do this, but I'm kind of a mind to just take it out completely and let council decide how they're going to.
It has to be a funding
Well, I
source.
don't understand, maybe you can speak to that.
Oh,
But at the moment, I'm wavering with point 4 because I don't have enough knowledge to know exactly where the money is coming from. We just need to find
you
it.
could put a question to the General Manager through me if you wish.
Okay, I will do that, thank you.
Would
So
like to do
through
that
you,
now?
through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager, is unrestricted cash reserves the most appropriate funding source for this construction?
Through you, Mr Mayor, that's a matter for the council. The
Okay,
cash
it is.
is
Right.
there, it is unrestricted.
Okay.
It's a matter for the council to decide.
Thank you. In that case then, point 4 is perfectly fine.
All right, so your amendment here is on screen at the moment, 1, 2, 3 and 4, is that correct? That's with your amendment.
Practicable? Yes, sorry, my eyesight is...
So is it item 2 that you've changed?
Yes, and I've just taken all of the biannual safety audit parts of point 3.
Can I?
Okay. So
I think
is that something, Councillor Collins, you would be willing to accept in that form?
I would be happy to take out everything after with a biannual safety. Take that out for this motion for now. So it's just
Councillor Collins, if you look at what's on the screen at the moment, are you happy with that? Could that become your...
pedestrian activity? Yeah, number 3 is fine. Look, number 4, I'd probably, I'm quite happy for it to be funded by a T Corp loan or whatever you think is appropriate, but there does have to be an identified funding source on there, so that's why that's there. So if you want to open that up, or you can come back and change it later. What are you?
Hold on, just a minute. Yeah, please. So you're suggesting that it could be opened up, not just cash reserve?
Depending on the rules.
Could I suggest, Mr Mayor, when we come back with the program for the works, that we confirm possible funding sources, whether that's unrestricted
So you
or
can
a
vary
TIC
from that.
loan.
Okay, okay, that's fine.
So that would mean taking out that last item?
No, that's fine. No, that's got to stay in there. That's a requirement because is that right? Because it identifies the funding source and we can change at a later stage, as long as it's funded. The only thing and so I accept all of those. The only thing, work to have the footpath constructed in time. Let's just set the goal 2020. It's going to be a very tight deadline, and if it comes back to we'll get an update on this, no doubt. And if it takes out, it's going to be longer. We'll at least understand why. But it is possible to do it. It's not impossible. It'll be tough, but I have been waiting 18 months. Just to get a decision on this, or probably actually 40, 50 years.
Councillor Collins, this is not a debate at this stage. What we're looking at is the amendment made by Councillor McLaughlin, and I'm asking you, are you happy with this as it is at the moment?
Accept all those other amendments, but I want to keep number 2 as it is. If
all right,
Councillor
so
McLaughlin would be happy.
Councillor McLaughlin, are you happy to? You're making the amendment, so are you happy to have 20, the beginning of the school year in 2020 in there?
Just a goal. It's work to. It's not have it done by.
Councillor Collins, please.
I'm just trying to get it
Councillor
done.
Collins, please.
What's-
I'm not dealing with you, Councillor
Why
Collins.
don't we just
I'm dealing
add-
with Councillor McLaughlin.
May I make a suggestion? We just put or after year.
Or
Yes,
after year.
as soon as practicable.
As soon as practical.
So, constructing time for the 2020 school year or as soon as practical.
What does that?
Councillor Collins, Councillor Collins,
Well, I don't
please.
accept the amendment.
Please.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get it
Please,
done.
we're just trying to work out what the amendment is at this stage. So, Councillor McLaughlin, we'll just pick up the words from the other, add it to yours.
Perhaps then putting work towards.
Now, Councillor McLaughlin, could you please look at that and tell me if you agree with that?
I'm going to just make a very simple change. Work towards having the footpath constructed in time for the 2020.
Does that mean the same?
Councillor
Means the same
Collins,
thing.
I'm
Councillor
just
Collins,
asking the question. Why do we even
Councillor
change
Collins,
It's
Councillor
just-
Collins, do
just-
I have to keep
May I
naming
just
you?
say that we've already heard that it's going to be near impossible to get it done by the end of January.
Yeah.
It may be possible to get it done by February or March. I just don't want the community to think that I want it done ASAP. We all want it done ASAP. But I just think that we've been told that it's not going to be done in time for the 2020 school year because of the various processes that we have to go. This has been going on for 18 months and that's unacceptable. We all know that. It's taken a long time. But if it's 2 or 3 months to get to fulfil the process, then that's what we might have to do. I think maybe we might put a restriction on it, I don't know, the end of term 1, who knows.
That's fine.
But I think we can't be done. This is signalling to the community in a public way that we're going to get this done by 2020, by the beginning of the school year, and we're actually possibly not. So therefore, we're already behind the 8 ball.
Could I ask you to look at this amendment and make sure you're happy with it? And it's you that has to be happy with it, Councillor. Could you check on the screen for me? Could you slide it up, please, a bit? Thank you.
Or just go back to what I originally had, which was work to have the footpath constructed as soon as practical.
What would you like to see in here? It's your call, Councillor.
I'll take towards.
Councillor Collins.
It means the same
Councillor
thing.
Collins. Councillor McLaughlin, it's your call. Are those words correct or would you like to vary them?
Yes, that's fine.
All right. So do I have a seconder?
They're accepted.
No, it's accepted in the original motion.
You're accepting them?
Yeah.
All right, very good. So it's Councillor Collins. Is there any further discussion on this, councillors, do you think? Councillor Collins, would you like to have a right of reply?
I'll just. No, I think it's. No, I think we've got this.
All right, thank you. Councillors, I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion, that's carried. That's unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Thank you very much for coming, for those of you who are here for this matter. We look forward to working with you in the new year to get it done as early as we can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We move on to item 3.3 and we have a speak to Dr. Alistair Shah. Dr. Shah.
Good evening, Mr Mayor and councillors. All these matters really run together. Tonight I'm hoping that you'll decide to I know that you're not in control of this proposal to erect the billboards over the overpass, but I'd like you to express your opposition to it. Billboards 12 metres wide, 3 metres high, with advertisements that change every 10 seconds. It's not a good fit for this part of the world. The RMS says there'll be safety messages for 5% of the time, but the messages are going to change every 10 seconds. And my concern is that although the reports associated with this show that in the last 5 years, or a recent 5-year period, there were only 2 crashes on the road, and one of those was a minor one, only one in which they regarded have had any significance. I think if you put up flashing billboards that change every 10 seconds, we're actually going to make safety worse here, in spite of the statement in the RMS letter. Under SEP 64, which is referred to, I had a look at it, it says that there must be a public benefit in allowing commercial advertising over state roads. But the RMS says that the benefit is to their general revenue. They don't offer any local benefit to Hunters Hill. Now, I know that RMS probably has the power to ignore anything that Council says, but let's pretend that it's possible to influence them. I support the concept of Councillors Miles and Collins that some of the revenue should be used for local benefit, but I don't think it should be just for prettying up the concrete and the railing and maybe, give some fertiliser to the palm trees. I think this is a good opportunity to ask for these matters we've just been talking about, the safe access over the north side of the overpass. I think this is such a good fit with the putting billboards on the overpass that we should be asking the RMS to make this clear. The RMS is in control of both matters. Let's put those matters together. And if they might decide they can fob us off by giving us something that we're going to have to do anyway, well, we get it sooner this way. It's a bit sad because it's a design fault, basically. It's a design fault that out of the 4 places where you have to cross a slip lane or heavy traffic, as a pedestrian, only one of them doesn't have pedestrian lights. It's crazy.
Move to extend Councillor Miles, Councillor Sanderson. Everyone in favour? Carried.
Thank you.
Please go ahead.
I understand that RMS has said, yes, they think that this matter should be fixed, and they will consider putting up for black spot funding maybe in the next financial year or maybe the following financial year. That's very uncertain. I think this is a great opportunity to put a bit of pressure on them to see this matter fixed sooner. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharp. Councillor Trassler, would you have a question of Dr. Sharp?
Thank you again, Dr. Sharp. We always appreciate your wisdom and insight. I just wanted to ask, though, to clarify, would you be supportive of the billboards if it meant that we actually got that rotten safety issue fixed at the overpass? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that if it's not possible to reject the billboards, then we should at least ask for a bribe.
Quid pro quo. Quid pro quo.
All right, Councillor Miles.
Dr. Sharp, would you see that the pedestrian safety improvements being in line broadly with the last PAMP that we did on the overpass,
yes.
or would you think that we should be engaging
No,
in an update?
I was out of time. That was my last sentence. Yes, it is.
Feel free to elaborate.
It is. The PAM considered that, and there's a little drawing there that shows exactly how to do it. Basically, it means making a tighter bend for cars turning left so they have to slow down, and having lights on that crossing. It's all there.
Yep.
Councillors, any further questions of Dr. Sharp? Thank you, Dr. Sharp.
Good, thank you.
All right, so we have 3.3. We've got to move Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Collins. Councillor Miles.
I am going to slightly amend the motion, Mr. Mayor, and I do apologise. Point 3.3, the welcome to Hunters Hill signage. I'm going to delete that and replace it with improved pedestrian safety measures. Point 3.3, welcome to Hunters Hill. No, it's the third dot point. I'll delete that. We broadly have it already. And I'll just put improved pedestrian safety measures. As per the Hunters Hill Village PAMP, as per PAMP. Yep.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak further on the motion?
As Dr. Sharp said, this application has been put in by state government. It's going to be assessed under SEP 64, which deals with road signage and signage more generally. We're not going to have that much of a say as to whether or not these LED billboards are installed. What I want to ensure is that the overpass, which is quite tired at the moment, and Hunters Hill generally gets a bit of benefit out of the installation of that signage. At the moment, Hunters Hill Council uses the overpass to put banners up. There is a monetary benefit associated with that. There's a community use associated with the use of those banners. I would like to see that use continue in some form. So if we have the capacity to advertise Hunters Hill Council events at a discount or whatever, I think we do need to have that conversation with the state government. Equally, the overpass has deteriorated over my lifetime and hasn't been given much attention. I think that we can do a better landscaping plan up there. I think that we can install some public art that pretties up one of the main entrances to Hunters Hill. And as Dr. Sharp said, if we can get some pedestrian access benefit, we have the plan. It is sitting there ready to go. There are things that council will need to do as a part of that PAMP because it bleeds into local government roads, but a lot of what needs doing up there is state government. So it will be a partnership, and this is what I'm intending to have this dialogue about, is to see what benefit we can get out of this application that's gone in. We may be some people may be in favour of it, some people may not. I think that broadly people probably wouldn't be in favour of the installation of the LED signage, but if it does go in, I think that we need to make sure that we are deriving some benefit out of it, and I think that this is a good way to start that dialogue.
Thank you, Councillor. We're wishing to speak against.
Not to speak against it as such. I actually agree with all of it.
So are you speaking for or against?
But I am going to foreshadow a further motion to defer. I just think this is a little bit premature. And I think this is absolutely a motion that can come back to council when we have had a chance to see the submission that I understand will be coming from council officers, or is being prepared by council officers at the moment. And we can't really make any decisions about whether or not we want this or whether or not we don't want this, or what kind of quid pro quo we want, or heritage impacts, or sight lines, or any of those things, until we actually see what the council officer's technical advice is in relation to this particular proposal that the state government is putting before us. So my motion is simply to defer this. I know that there's a deadline of November 14, and so I'm assuming that we will have something before then that we can look at and debate at that point. But without it, these motions are just not, they're just a little bit premature.
All right, so if this is lost, you're foreshadowing a deferment.
Or we could just amend to defer.
What would you like?
This may in fact be, if we do in fact decide that we do want these LED lights, so that's the recommendation that council officers bring to us, then all of this can be considered.
So are you moving an amendment, or are you moving? You're saying you're foreshadowing. If this is lost, you'll bring that.
Yes. Well, yes. Okay.
All right. Thank you. Who would like to speak against the motion?
Against?
No, I'm not speaking
No.
against it.
Against the motion?
Well, not necessarily against at this point in time.
So is anybody wishing to, well, just is anybody wishing to
I
speak?
have a question though. If I could?
Yes?
If I could, through you, Mr Mayor, could General Manager confirm that the Council will in fact be making a submission on this matter? I've heard from Councillor McLaughlin, but I would like to be confident about that before we just defer rather than propose to move a motion.
I think we've got your question. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the intention was to bring a report to the 11th of November meeting ahead of the deadline with matters for Council's considerations.
Anybody wishing to speak against? For? Councillor Collins.
I'll speak for the motion. I'm not sure how I actually feel about the billboards being put there, but they are going to be put there. I would think the revenue that will come from those billboards probably upward of $10,000 a week each way. So we're probably looking at about $1.2 million of revenue from the state government would get. That's based on what I know about billboard advertising, which is just a little bit. Now, this motion is simply to say, if it's going to happen, can we get in on it? Because we may or may not be able to stop it. I doubt when we're talking about those kinds of dollars whether we could stop it. But I mean, even a 25% share would be $300,000 a year, which we could really use. What this will do is inform our I imagine we're going to make a submission. It has an opportunity to inform our decision on that and what kind of a submission we have. If they say a blatant no, we're not getting any revenue share, well then, of course, we should rally against it. But you know, there's probably quite a lot of work that needs to be done up on the overpass there, and this might be. And I think what Dr. Sharp was saying is, yeah, he hit the nail on the head there. If we can tie those two things together, so yeah, I think we should do this. Just engage with the conversation. Next meeting, I imagine we'll be discussing how we feel about the billboards themselves. But for now, let's just open up the dialogue and see whether we can get in on this.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak against? Councillor Crassel.
I don't actually want to speak against the motion. I think it's all really valid. And
are you speaking against the motion?
I am speaking against it. I'm saying I don't want to. But I think that everything that you're recommending here is a very good idea, and there's plenty of articles around about, you know, you can be the objector or you can get on board and get the outcomes you want. And in fact, that was some of the conversation we were having before this meeting in our councillor briefing about some legal matters. So I think it is important to get it by the horns, but I also think that it's important to respect that council management and senior staff are already working to deliver us their recommendations with their expertise, and I just think it would be kind of sloppy of us to pass a motion without all of that information in front of us. So while I agree with the intent, I personally just think we should also defer and wait for the full council report and make a more informed decision that will make us make a better submission, because we do want the best outcomes.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the motion? Against the motion? Councillor Williams.
Again, I'm not speaking technically against the motion in terms of whether or not it would be reasonable for council to seek a contribution in relation to these signs if they have to go in. I think that's appropriate. But I do take up Dr. Sharp's point. I think council needs to very strongly object to what is being proposed here. The signs offer little benefit to Hunters Hill people. It will detract from one of our key objectives, which is our conservation area number one, which is the peninsula, the peninsula part of the conservation area. To put 12 metre by, or 12.5 by 3.3 metre signs changing every 10 seconds or whatever it is, 24 hours a night, 24 hours a day, to me is not what Hunters Hill is about. It is contrary to what Hunters Hill is about, and it will detract significantly from the amenity of Hunters Hill, particularly in that location. And dare I say, it will probably provide some safety issues in terms of people leaving the roadway and coming up to the overpass. They'll be looking at these bright signs flicking away in their faces. If we weren't successful in what Councillor Miles is looking for in terms of the public being able to display advertising on those panels, then at the moment we have a range of community banners that are put up there. Whether they're legal or not doesn't really matter. That location is a very productive way for local community groups to get a message across. And I would hate to think that opportunity would be lost through putting these signs up there and obscuring. Basically, anybody that's driving across the overpass will not be able to see beyond those signs. They'll be up the height, as I understand it, the height of the railing. So, Mr. Mayor, I think we need to go further than this. I think we need to give some instruction to staff to say that council is fundamentally objects to what is being proposed. It needs to make it very clear for a range of reasons which I've articulated as to why it is unacceptable, and I think Dr. Sharp also made reference to many of those issues. So I support this, but I would also prefer to see it deferred until we have a very clear picture from the staff, and I would expect that picture to be very much in opposition to what's being proposed. So that's my position, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, so we've got anybody else wishing to speak for? Against? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Could I be clear? Are you speaking against?
Yes.
All right.
Being the technical person that I am, I've had gone into this in quite a lot of detail. I had in fact prepared an alternate motion. I won't put it tonight, but my research did show that there are very significant problems with this proposal. As Dr. Sharp has already suggested, there is no benefit to the people of Hunters Hill. There are problems in terms of their visibility on the approaches. They're inappropriate in a heritage conservation area. They will block views of people crossing the overpass both to Lindley Point and to Huntley's Point. And there's just a whole range of things. I'm very happy to have staff have a look at the reasons I've put together. But given that it's been suggested that the motion be deferred, I would take that position as well.
All right. We don't actually have a motion to defer. We have a number of people for. We have some people who don't want to speak against but spoke against. And we've got somebody who definitely spoke against. So I'm not quite sure how this is going to pan out. But I'll...
we have a foreshadowed deferral motion?
We do have some foreshadowed, yes.
Yeah.
So if the motion fails, we'll go to the deferral foreshadowed.
So it's not
wishy-washy. So, Councillor Miles, you deal with that. Should write a reply, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I think, as Councillor Collins has stated, we are going through the process of the pure planning grounds of the LED billboards. I think to make an informed decision at the time about that, Councillor McLaughlin called it a quid pro quo. Councillor Dr. Sharp called it something else. But if we are going to derive significant benefit out of the signage being installed, I would like to know that prior to the determination of council, based on a unbiased planning report, which the staff will be preparing. If that comes with significant community benefit because of discussions that have been had with RMS, I would like to have that information on the table to make that informed decision at the time. Because if we are dealing with this on pure planning grounds, I think that there's few people in the chamber that would say, yippee, chuck the signs up, if there's no benefit to Hunters Hill. If we are weighing the options of whether or not we're going to see significant benefit, monetary or otherwise, out of this, and we're going to have to, agree with the installation, or there is no agreed benefit, therefore we can make a decision against the installation. I think that that's something that we should have in front of us for the next meeting, not something that we will put something forward saying that we don't want the LED signage, then again we go cap in hand to the state government saying, oh, by the way, we want our share. I would just make that point.
All right, thank you, Councillor. I'll put the motion, and the motion has an amendment in it, of course. Your amendment, Councillor Miles, so improve pedestrian safety. So I'll put the motion. Those in favour of the motion? Against? That's lost. So we had a foreshadowed motion to defer this until the 11th of November. Is that correct? Who put that motion to defer? Councillor McLaughlin. Would you like to speak to that?
Only to say I've always been a strong believer in just having all of the information in front of me from all sources before I make a decision on something. There's absolutely nothing in here I don't agree with, but I can't see why this can't form part of any submission that we end up making based on all of the information that we have before us on the 11th of November. It may be that quite a lot of it gets into our final submission. So that's the reason why I defer. I think we just need to consider all of our alternatives and all of our options before we actively engage on something that we may have a recommendation or a report that says that it's actually technically deficient or something like that. So that's the reason why I moved to defer this motion.
Second, Councillor Williams. So anybody wishing to speak against the deferment?
I will.
Councillor Collins.
As Councillor Miles has already explained, we're now going to have to make a decision on whether or not we support this without all the information. A simple motion to engage in discussions about whether or not we can get a share of this to inform the decision we ultimately make, that's now off the table. So what's going to happen is we're going to bring this to council. Of course we're going to reject it on the grounds of whether we want it or not. Of course we don't. If we don't get any money out of this, I do not support those billboards. I can tell you that now, and I don't think anyone here would. But now what's going to happen is, as Councillor Miles pointed out, we're all going to vote against it because we're not going to know whether we're going to get a revenue share. And then we're going to go to them after the fact and say, we fought tooth and nail to stop this happening, but can we, have our share now? That's absolutely ridiculous. And why would you defer something like that to simply engage in discussion to find out whether we can get a share is bordering on negligent, because we're now going to get nothing, basically. So they'll go up, they're going to happen. Like I said, it's over $1 million of revenue a year that the state government will get. That's what a billboard costs, 10,000 a week, plus, minus. So they're going to do it, and ultimately, because we haven't engaged with them, we're going to get none of it. So I guess, back to the drawing board on looking for those revenue streams that we've just thrown out an opportunity because no one wants to make a simple decision to have a discussion tonight. Ridiculous.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the deferment?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The General Manager's heard the discussion around the table and the support for looking at the option that Councillor Miles put on the table. I would expect in the report that comes back that the staff will have engaged with the RMS as to what their appetite is for some sharing of the revenue out of this proposal if they're pig-headed and go ahead with it regardless. So what I understand the deferment is about is to get the complete picture. It doesn't exclude the General Manager from engaging with the department. And I would suggest, after listening to the debate around the table and the support for that approach, that would be a very worthwhile process for the staff to engage with, and to bring back to council a complete report that covers both the planning issues, which I've already spoken, that I believe it is not a suitable application for Hunters Hill, regardless of how much money they throw at us. It's got to be a principle-based planning decision based on the facts. And then, at the same time, we should be engaging to see what their position is, not only on whether they're prepared to share some of the revenue, but are they going to be pig-headed about this, or are they generally consulting with Hunters Hill Council and its community? Because if this is a consultation process, then they should be prepared to listen to what we have to say, prepared to listen to our position on this issue. So deferral, I think, is the appropriate thing to do. The staff have a pretty good understanding of where council's thinking is from the discussion around the table, and they'll bring back an appropriate report that covers all the issues. So I support the deferment on that basis.
Anybody wishing to speak against the deferment? For the deferment? Against? I'll put the motion. Those in favour of deferring? Against? That's lost. That's carried, so it's carried.
I wonder if we could move item 4.1 up the agenda. We just have a school-age student hoping to speak to this item.
4.1?
Yeah.
All in favour? Carried.
It's the
4.1 is the draft Baronia Plan of Management, and we have a speaker. And the speaker is Mr. Jack Dixon. Welcome, Jack.
Hello. Now, I've got some proposal sheets to hand out, but I'll hand them out at the end. Okay. Mayor, councillors and members of the public, thank you for giving us the opportunity to put forward a cycling pump track and dirt jump track case. I, like many of my friends, discovered cycling when I was very young. And I was 2, so I've been cycling for around 14 years now. We ride up to about 6 hours a day, we challenge each other, enter enduro races and downhill competitions. We give advice to other kids and teach them how to ride. We're interested in growing and learning about this sport. Councillors may have noticed many young people riding in the local community, as it's the perfect stress relief, keeps us fit and connected to the environment. Sorry, I'm sick. However, due to the lack of local dedicated facilities, young people have to travel to specific bike parks like Old Man's Valley and Hornsby, or make do with what is in the area. Hunters Hill has been great in providing facilities for sports teams, but cycling has never really been a priority. So, we propose to Council that it strongly consider providing a location and investing the development of an off-road cycling hub. This will meet the needs for kids who are beginners, right up to dirt jumps who will challenge very experienced riders. The planning process should involve local young youth representatives, council, subject matter experts to ensure a high level of community engagement. It would be a fantastic project for all kids, both in cycling now and future generations who will be tempted into the world of cycling. Now, the proposed location of the pump track. The unused space in Baroni Park, usually referred to as the horse paddock, is the prime location for a skills park. Because the paddock is a good size, you could build a multi-skill level pump track with jumps and challenging obstacles. The rough concept of the park could include a beginner and advanced pump track with a more advanced jump line for dedicated riders. This location is ideal because it does not directly impact any residents, and it would provide local cycling youth a place they can call their own. The benefit to community and surrounding area. The pump track would enhance the area by bringing out local kids out of the house into the outdoors and improving their fitness and overall mental health. The track would also keep kids and teenagers in a safe environment away from traffic. Conclusion. The project is a great opportunity for young people and council to work together to create a cycling space for future generations of cyclists. Thank you. and I'll hand these out.
Thank you, Jack. First of all, let me compliment you on 2 minutes 47 seconds. Very impressive. We don't have many speakers who are quite capable of that, so you've done well.
Thank you.
So, Council, is there any questions? Councillor Crassley.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Thanks, Jack, for making the effort to come along, and to you and your friends for making the effort to engage with Council in such a positive and proactive way. I just wanted to ask you, do you feel safe when you're riding at Baronia Park?
Yeah, I feel reasonably safe. It's a bit sketchy when it comes to like dark hours, but we usually have lights on. But yeah, it's usually a safe environment.
Thank you. My question would be to the General Manager, so I'll hold it.
Okay. Councillors, any further questions of Jack? Councillor Miles.
Well done on the initiative, that's fantastic. Youth engagement's not something we've done traditionally particularly well in Huntersville Council, I think you probably agree. On the plan as shown, and I'd encourage you to read it, on the northern end of Oval 3, we're proposing a smaller circuit bike track. Have you had a look at that yet?
No, I haven't.
No. It might be something worth looking at. It's probably not the same format in terms of scale as yours, but it would be good if you could perhaps write a submission to that, and if you want it moved to Horse Paddock or elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, the issue is there's lots of like bike tracks, like Buffalo Creek Reserve. They've got a bike track, but it's more catered to like the younger group, like kids. And there's plenty of like parks and playgrounds around that are like for kids, but there's nothing really in the youth like teen area. So this proposal is more suited around teenagers, and yeah, there's nothing really around that's not like rugby or soccer, you know.
Thanks.
All right, councillors, any further questions? Thank you very much for your presentation, and we'll read your printed presentation too. Councillor Craslow.
Just a question through you, Mr Mayor, either to yourself for advice or the General Manager. I know that the motion before us is about the draft plan of management, so just before I think about whether an amendment is required, I just want your advice. If Council were to take up this wonderful, generous, energetic and enthusiastic proposal for an engagement, would we want it included in this plan of management motion, or would it be something that we could do outside of requiring any kind of motion early in the new year, perhaps?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the draft plan of management on page, I think, 114 does discuss a BMX track or a bike dirt track.
It does.
So as part of that process, we would, going forward, engage with young people around that, and also appropriate designers if it were to be included in the draft plan of management. So I'd encourage submissions as part of the draft plan of management from
Thank you. And so
yeah,
you feel
from
that that's
Jack.
enough for now, and that if the plan of management is endorsed, that we could open this conversation early in the new year, perhaps?
Yes, through you, Mr Mayor.
So the recommendations on page 7, moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Crassley. Councillor Miles.
I will speak to this very briefly, Mr Mayor. Obviously, this has been a hot topic of the last couple of months. We have gone through a process of forming the CAG, and I think that there were a couple of missteps in that process, not from the point of view of the legislation, but in terms of engagement. I think we've gone a long way to rectify that with the public meeting we had. I think people are engaged. I dare say we're going to get a lot of submissions from both the active and passive and bush care volunteers down in Baronia Park, and I welcome the next 42 days of submissions, and I think that as much as we can, we should be encouraging people who are users of the park to write in submissions. Obviously, we will start to formulate our view as a council based on the feedback and submissions that we receive, and I think it's important that anyone who is a user of the park speak up and make sure their voice is heard, because at the end of the day, it is the submissions that will guide us in formulating the final product of this, which hopefully will be coming back to council before the end of the year at an extraordinary meeting.
Thank you, councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against the recommendation? For the recommendation? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I do thank Jack for his presentation tonight. I think it's raised an issue that is important with our youth, and I'm still unclear as to the role of the plan of management in being able to address those sort of issues. There's no, on page 70, figure 11, there's no reference to Finlay's paddock, which has been referred to as the horse paddock, as being able to be considered for that purpose. There's just something over on Oval 3. How do you move from an exhibited plan to then putting a foreign element into that planning? I think that needs to be identified now and potentially and included in the plan as something that will be exhibited, because if all of a sudden that pops out of the woodwork and is not part of this exhibition process, how do we incorporate it later on? So I think the submission is relevant, is well thought through and well articulated, and I'd be suggesting that Council include that as an option in the plan, because at the moment it's not on the plan, and how do you bring it back in after it's been on exhibition? Just a question to the General Manager before I speak in further.
Through Mr Mayor, what would normally happen is through the plan of management process you receive submissions and ideas, and then they're considered in the context of all the submissions and ideas and brought back to Council for adoption. So two ways forward. One way would be to move to put that in the draft and go out that way with that exhibited, or Jack and other writers could put in a submission as part of the draft plan of management. So there may, sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, there may be other things that come through that process. So it's about exhibiting, seeking submissions, and then bringing that back to the Council to make a final decision on the plan of management, because it's about closing off the process.
Mr Mayor, as this is a live issue that's been put on the table for us tonight, I think it should be included in the plan of management, and I'd move an amendment that we do incorporate the option, a second option for whatever it's called in the plan at the moment, for Finlay's paddock to be considered.
Pump track?
Yeah.
As a contract.
Well, as proposed BMX mounds and, well, pump track, whatever the terminology is, would be my suggestion, because otherwise it gets a bit complicated down the track and gives those who or wish to see it to fruition the opportunity to talk about something concrete rather than throwing something out.
Right, if you hold on just a moment, we'll capture that. Please have a seat for the moment, and we'll see if we can capture that and make sure we get it right. So, Jack, can I ask you a question? Does pump track cover it, or is it a bike jump set stroke pump track?
It's open, so it's not covered.
Could you say it again? Come down the front, please, sorry, if you don't mind me asking.
Could you repeat that? Sorry, I missed
What
that.
is it you're trying to achieve? Is it a bike jump stroke pump track?
Yeah, so you could have two. It's open, but like you could have. What I was saying is you could have 3 different levels. So you could have beginner, intermediate, and advanced. So it would cover all ages. Beginner and intermediate being just like rollers, so just mounds that you ride over, and then the advanced track being jumps.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's on the front of your present is a bike jump stroke pump track. That covers everything?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Williams?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, that's.
Please have a seat, Jack. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, that covers the intent of the amendment.
Do I have a second for that? Councillor Crossley. Councillor Williams.
Also in the same vein, we have on the plan of management, in terms of siting of the community facility, 3 locations, which it was my understanding at the discussions we had at the other Saturday that the proposal was also to have consideration further towards Oval 3, rather than just wedged in between the 2 ovals. Now, what's the flexibility of this process if neither of the current proposed 3 locations get carriage through the exhibition process? Again, are we then hamstrung that we haven't got a position there to be adopted, or do we just modify it as we go along?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, could you repeat that again? Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Look, the question or the point I'm making is that we are putting on exhibition now a plan of management as a draft.
Yep.
That draft has been through an exhaustive community consultation process at many levels, through and probably well in excess of what would normally be done for a plan of management. I mean, just a big concern that what we've been talking to the community about is now in some cases not included as an option within the plan. And again, you could probably argue for the inclusive playground. There was an option to have it up near the netball courts, and that doesn't appear in this draft plan at the moment. Just a bit concerned of the messages we're going to be giving to the community. On the consultation, the community's given us very clear feedback, but the plan that they're now going to consider doesn't have those options in it. So, Mr. Mayor, I see a problem as we move forward if we want to resolve this issue quickly, that there's not enough information in this plan or enough options in this plan as we've seen with the cycling side of things to really nail this in the time frame that you're looking for, because there may be more questions raised than answered if we don't put a range of options in.
Through Mr. Mayor, as the councillors would be aware, the consultants looked at a whole range of different options, and in putting forward these 3, they have looked at the advantages and disadvantages for each of the options. So I believe with the playground there were around 6 options, or 6 or 7 options that were canvassed, and what the consultants have put forward are 3. The same with the facility, there are a number of options. They've narrowed those, taking into account the advantages and disadvantages. The purpose of the exhibition period is to seek feedback from the community on that, and I guess it's a point about putting that out there. Now, if people come back and say there's an alternate site that they'd like to consider, they can bring that forward, and it will be considered in the final draft of the report, the plan of management. It's a case of there's got to be a point where you do draw the line and make a decision which way it's going to go. And I think the purpose of going out on exhibition is to really seek that broad feedback, bring it back, and then we can make an assessment then.
Councillor Williams.
Mr. Mayor, I felt we've already been through a broad consultation process, and we should understand pretty well what the community's expectation or what they see as potential options that should be in the paper.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Could I try to understand your question a little bit so that I've got it? Are you suggesting that what's in the plan of management at the moment is prescriptive and we shouldn't move away from what's prescribed in the plan? Is that... Am I going too far in suggesting that?
Yes, you are, Mr. Mayor. What I'm saying is probably the opposite to that, is that the plan as it now is seen doesn't include enough options for the community to relate to what they've already told us the moment. We've been through an exhaustive consultation process. We've been told that the community expect a range of options here, and just because the consultant has brought it back to 3 or whatever, there's no justification given here in terms of the detail as to why that's taken place. And more importantly, it shows that we're not listening to what the community has said through the consultation process. So why would they have any confidence in us to listen to them in this next phase? To me, the draft needs to canvass a broader range of options than what we've got here, in good faith to the community, so the community can actually see that we've been listening to them, to encourage them to go the next step of either committing to a location or a use or not. And at the moment, to me, this is too limiting and doesn't respect the process we've been through with the community today.
All right. As I see it at the moment, there's an amendment which you've moved,
Yes.
seconded Councillor Crassoy. Does that amendment cover everything that you're saying?
Mr Mayor, no it doesn't. I could put a part 5 there which suggests that we increase the number of options to reflect the community. Well, I think we should put all the options in, to be quite honest, Mr Mayor, so that the community can actually have a say. So that the part 5 would be, now actually I'll leave part 5 out because I want to get what's there through, and I don't want to confuse it by having another part which, at the end of the day, yeah, anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? For the amendment?
Just to say,
Councillor Miles.
Mr Mayor, and I support the concept that I think that we're not giving as much credence to the process of submissions as we should. All of the options that are identified are liquid at the moment. Everything in the plan, if enough submissions come in, will be amended as a part of this process. So a pump track is if you and your friends get a group of interest together and enough of you make that submission, we have to consider it. Equally, if enough people say that they don't want the community facility in a certain location, we have to take heed of that. So the General Manager's right, we had to distill it down into options rather than it just be free-flowing. But I think that that we're not giving as much weight to the submissions that are going to come in as I think we should be, and the staff certainly will be doing, as happened in the last plan. These submissions matter, these submissions count, and the more that come in, the more broad the view we can have of the community, the better, because that will actually, the things in this plan will change significantly if the submissions guide them to do so.
Thank you, Councillor.
Just a question, Can I just ask?
Who's your question?
Through you, Mr Mayor, to Councillor Miles, what do you mean by we're not giving enough weight?
Could you direct it up here? What's
Through you,
question?
Mr Mayor, Councillor Miles. I'm wondering what he means by not giving enough weight. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I mean that when the submissions come in, I'm not saying that we're not going to consider them. I'm saying that when they come in, they actually have to guide what is in this plan. So there may be sightings for, let's say, the community facility. I'll pick that up, that component. That doesn't mean that they have to be cited on any of the options that are there. They can be anywhere based on the submissions that come in. Okay. So for us to say, to be niggling around with where we think the square should be, at this point is inappropriate because this is all liquid and it's based on the submissions that come in.
Thank you, Councillor. So anybody wishing to speak against?
It's the amendment.
Yes? For? Councillor Sampson.
I share Councillor Williams' concerns that I think a lot of people looking at this map will have a look at the 3 boxes where the community facility might go. There are 3 yellow areas where the inclusive playground might go. it may not occur to them to suggest something else. And in the session we had at Boronia Park the other Saturday was incredibly useful. I saw a lot of different options, and I believe we should be making some additions. I wouldn't suggesting all 6, but I would suggest that perhaps we should put one additional location in for the community facility, and one additional location for the inclusive playground, as well as what Councillor Williams has suggested. So I guess we deal with Councillor Williams' amendment first, but I think I would foreshadow a further amendment to have one additional location for each of the community facility and the inclusive playground.
Thank you. Right reply, Councillor Williams.
No, Mr Mayor, I'm fine.
So the amendments there up on the screen. Is that correct, Councillor Williams?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. So there's no further discussion, then we're done with that, are we? That amendment becomes a motion, that's it?
No, I think it'll be a further amendment.
So the amendment is approved, is carried. So Councillor Sanderson, a further amendment.
Yes, I would like to suggest that we include in the plan of management one further location for the community facility. That location be between Ovals 1 and Oval 2, but located further to the, I guess it would be southeast.
Let's see if we can capture your words. Just hold on for a moment.
Sorry, could you repeat that, Councillor Sanderson?
So that one further location be added to the plan of management. Is that correct?
That a further location for the community facility be added to the plan of management. Or draft plan of management. For the community facility be added to the draft plan of management. And that be between Ovals 1 and 2, further to the southeast, then the 2 adjacent locations, or 2 other location between Oval 1 and 2.
I'll second it.
All right, thank you.
And then the other part of the amendment would be that a further location for the inclusive playground be added.
Play space.
Oh, play space, if you like. To the draft plan of management. And that be at the location of option 2 for the community facility.
Someone's struggling.
All right, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Miles, that second part, do you also accept that? Second that?
Where would that be, Councillor Sanderson?
Well, at the present time, we have an option.
Like just
option 2.
Geographically near what? The car park?
Yes. Yeah, between the car
No,
park and
I
the
wouldn't support that. So I'll withdraw 1 second.
All right. So
I'll second.
So Councillor Williams will second your further amendments. So Councillor Sanderson, do you wish to speak further on that? Why have you suggested both of those?
Well, the first thing that, I mean, there has been, one of the things that I certainly picked up at the meeting on the last Saturday, where we spoke to a lot of members of the public, that there were concerns about the location of the community facility. I think there is strong argument for, as I think Councillor Miles would agree, for it to be a bit further back between the two ovals. So I think that's important that be included, because if it's not included, people will not see that as an option. The other thing is that it's important, I think, with the inclusive play space, that be located near toilet facilities. At the present time, we have one area which is located in a fairly low marshy area, as I think Councillor Crassoy had some concern over. There's another that's in proximity to one of the areas of turpentine, and that I think it'd be more appropriate that it be located in that location where the present or the option 2 for the community facility is. That way it's in closer proximity to any of the places where the new community facility will end up, and also to the existing grandstand, which also has toilet facilities. I think that's a better option all round, and I think a lot of people, you know, that are concerned about the impact would find that attractive, and I think we need to give them that option to express a view on when this plan goes out for consultation.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wish to speak against the amendment? Anybody for? So the amendment becomes a motion?
Well, I think we've put the amendment, haven't
We can, but the amendment will become the motion after we've done with that. I think it becomes a motion after that. So I'll put the amendment. Those in favour? Against? So the amendment becomes, that's carried. The amendment becomes a motion. Those in favour? Against? That's carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll go to 4.2.
Mr Mayor, I'm just conscious that there are residents here from Prince Edward Street, and I know they haven't put applications to speak in, but I'm wondering whether you would give me...
3 speakers for 4.2, if I'm correct.
4.2?
4.2, yep.
Aren't we on 3.4? We're at 3.4 though.
Sorry. Could I suggest we bring 4.2 forward? Move Councillor Williams.
We have potentially people that have sat here for 3.4 as well. I think that we should deal with both.
I think we should deal with both as fast as possible, which means we need to bring 4.2 forward anyway. 3.4 and then 4.2.
Councillors, I'd like to suggest we bring 4.2 forward because we have 3 registered speakers for that. Do I have a second?
Yes.
All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. 4.2. Thanks for pointing it out though, Councillor Miles. Appreciate it. The first speaker we have is Ms. Angelo Ponticello. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good evening, all. Thank you, Mayor, General Manager and councillors for listening to me. My name is Angela Ponticello and I live across the bridge in Drummoyne. I was issued a parking fine by Hunters Hill Council at the intersection of Mount Street and Stanley Street. The 24th of July at 10:27, I found myself to respond to a distress call from the hospital for my very ill mother, now deceased. I suffer from anemia and have a disability pass for the condition of HHT. It's a bleeding disorder, you may not know it, but anyway. Badly stressed, I parked in what seemed a perfectly safe spot. Quickly checked for signage before entering the hospital. Clearly thought it was a legitimate parking spot, and there was no signage for no stopping, hadn't had issues prior to this date. Stanley Street appears to be an entrance to the hospital car park. It has no street sign. Please use your discretion in all the circumstances and please withdraw this penalty notice. I know you have the legal power to do this under the Fines Act. I'm sure there are many more persons accidentally caught by this parking spot, in excess of 70, and that includes myself. Many are elderly, disabled patients or family under stress, similar to what I was that day. Also, an elder generation would be mostly unaware, I know this is silly, but unaware of the 10-metre rule and the 2 demerit points that now apply. Thank you for listening to me, and I hope you can install the required signs quickly and withdraw my fine.
Thank you, Mrs. Ponticello.
Thank you.
I'm sorry to hear of your loss.
It wasn't good.
I'm sure it must be very difficult for you.
It wasn't good. Thank you.
Councillors, are there any questions of Mrs. Ponticello?
I'm sorry, I just missed the date that you were fined.
I was fined on the 24th of July at 10:27.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Collins.
Of the General Manager, what would be involved in withdrawing that fine?
Through Mr Mayor, and I might ask the Director to add to this, but people can appeal to the State Revenue Office to have their fines appealed, and that's the process that we have in place. So if people are fined because they've parked inappropriately, that goes off to the State Revenue Office, and then people can appeal that, and the State Revenue Office will consider extenuating circumstances.
And does Council have the power to withdraw that, or?
It's not something that we have done, and in light of some of the feedback, we're seeking legal advice on that. But what we understand at this point is that because of our agreement, it's with State Revenue Office. However, we are seeking legal advice.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Oh, sorry, just another question on that, just through you, Mr Mayor, the General Manager. Is there a time limit on that appeal, given that it was on the 24th of July?
Through you, Mr Mayor.
Through you, Mayor. Once you lodge a submission or an objection to the State Revenue, everything's pending and they'll advise you. So it's on hold until they review the whole thing. So if you lodge a submission, it's on hold. Having said that, I believe any ticket is 14-day turnaround, so you need to respond within 14 days.
Councillors, any further questions? Councillor Williams.
I've tried everything and it was out of time, and due to the death, and due to I work in Jindabyne as well, so I commute, and the fine was sent to Drummoyne, and I also attended the RMS at Coomar to try and do it within time, and the fine wasn't on the computer there and then, because the gentleman was very nice to me and tried to help me do it. Therefore, by the time I got back here after winter and commuting and whatever, it was out of time. So it's now I've been advised that it can come back to the council and you have the legal rights to withdraw. And what I've also found out is that this is quite an occurrence several times a week at that particular spot. It's a really tricky spot. In distress, you think it's a legitimate one. So in excess of 70 fines over the year have happened. And like mine, I'd say people would be frantic or whatever, or disabled, and they would take the parking spot. There's just no signage, and it was a wet morning that morning as well. So
I think we have one more question for you from
Yeah,
Councillor
sure.
Williams.
Sure.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the General Manager. If we make an exception for the Speaker, does that mean we'd have to do the same for all the other people that have been booked under those circumstances? Like where do we just make, if we were to make an exception, just one, or does everybody?
In compassion.
Yeah, well, but the others may have equal compassion.
Through you, Mr Mayor, the reason why we rely on the State Revenue Office is because there is that ability to appeal. I'm sure that that Ms Ponticello isn't the only person in this situation, and I'm sure that there'll be others. I think with the parking, the rule for the 10-metre parking, I think, has been in place for 10 to 15 years. I think with the changes that are proposed, that'll make it even clearer that not to park in that spot. To answer your question, Councillor Williams, it sets a precedent.
Councillors, any further questions? Thank you very much. Councillor Krassoi?
Sorry, excuse me. Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm just wondering, to perhaps the General Manager.
Ms Ponticello, please have a seat.
Thank you.
Could we, as council, write a letter of that we recognise Ms Ponticello's distress and the situation she's in, and we've heard her case, and that would the Department of State Revenue consider her appeal again because it was outside, I'm not a legal person, or that no, there's nothing we can do there to help her. Yeah.
I'll take that on notice.
We have another speaker, Mr. Rory Stein-Davis. Welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I addressed you a couple of months ago, highlighting the geography and dangerous vehicles of Mary Street. Then I identified the only school in Mary Street is located to the south side of Mary Street and Mark Street intersection. Also that the 2018 signage implemented is dangerous and the buses don't fit in Mark and Mary Street. I believe it's appalling the information provided to residents to date and the response received from councillors and council who are more concerned about the tone instead of the installation of a pedestrian crossing in a dangerous location. It should be obvious to any reasonable person the RMS has provided a safe preferred location, and the New South Wales police have made suggestions on how to mitigate traffic in the area. Yet these are not recommended, so I ask why. Your advisory committee has gone even further by spelling out the Australian standards 1742 and its safe distance from an intersection, yet this has not been recommended either. I could talk to you about safety, buses, heavy vehicles, cornices, radiuses, routes, strategies, parking, the environment, topography, light poles, pits, tractors, conditional vehicles, paramedics, access, T-boned vehicles, crashes and carnage. But you don't care. I don't even know why you have a traffic committee, to be honest. I assume the committee's proceedings are brief. Not one single car parking space will be lost in this endeavour to put a pedestrian crossing in a dangerous location. And that residents still don't have the right to view or have any consultation on the proposals. Finally, there appears to be a growing double standard in our community, one for the private school community and others for local residences. Animosity is growing on the north side of Mary Street, and I suggest you talk to the community equally. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillors, is there any question of Mr. Stein-Davies? Thank you very much. Please have a seat. We have another speaker this evening, Mr. Noel Plum. Welcome, Mr. Plum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is it possible to have some water? It's been a long, dry wait.
Some water? Yes, certainly, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Plum,
Good
you have
evening.
3 minutes.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, General Manager, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for hearing me. My name's Noel Plum. I live in East Ryde, in the Ryde Council, but basically a stone's throw from Hunters Hill, and I've supported this council over many years in many matters, including helping with the anti-amalgamation fights, going to bat for your environmental issues, which have also been mine. I want to say, though, that I find myself absolutely astounded with the situation I now face. I'm one of the 80 people caught in one parking spot that has no signage, looks a legitimate parking spot right outside the Hunters Hill Hospital. On the day I was fined, the 23rd of July, was my first day driving back after a very serious hip operation, hip replacement. I was allowed to drive short distances only. I got into the street. I'd never driven into that street before, and there appeared to be only one legitimate parking spot. So I took it because it was a reasonable walk with the walking stick and I could manage it. I came back to my car to find I'd been booked for being within 10 metres of an intersection. Now, the intersection in question is the very narrow Stanley Road that loops around the back of the hospital, and for all intents and purposes, when I parked, never having been there before, I took it as a car park entry. There is no street sign on it, and the curb shape is one that actually clears the sight lines much better than you would expect. So all up, I parked there. Now, there was no signage, no stopping sign, no parking sign, no thick yellow line along the curb, which is the other alternative under the New South Wales road rules, nothing. What there was, as I later discovered, was a very thin, very worn out, practically invisible yellow line that had been painted perpendicular to the curb by your parking officer 9 months before. On the day I attended, as on many other days, on the day Ms. Ponty was fined, on the next day the Mr. Mile ruler was fined, that was absolutely covered with pasted on leaf litter and papers. You could not see it. Even if it hadn't been so pasted, you would not have picked it up as you drove in at ordinary heights. It was invisible, and this looked like a very legitimate spot. Now, honestly, council has made a complete muck of this. 80 of us in one spot over a year. In the 2 years prior, before council decided to get heavy with their policing of this place, seven bookings. Now, 80 in 1 year, and yet you proceeded to increase your policing enormously, but you put the cart before the horse. You didn't you didn't put any signage in. So those are my personal circumstances on the day. But my generation of drivers, we all took our licences back in the 70s. It was a 6 metre rule according to the RMS.
Move to extend. Councillor Miles, Councillor McLaughlin, all in favour, please go ahead.
A 6 metre rule from the very early 70s. Those of us who've been driving 30 and 40 years didn't even remember that. All we knew was that you left a reasonable distance between your car and the intersection, usually a car length, somewhere between 4 and 6 metres, as it happens. Now, that was changed in 1999 to 10 metres. Nobody in my generation received a letter. I can assure you, I've spoken to a lot of people from the RMS telling us that, as none of us received a letter or a specific communication, that as on 2018, 2 demerit points had been added for this issue. Now, this is not a dangerous intersection. This has just been caught up in a general sweeping belief that you need to police these intersections more tightly. Now, I do say to you, you can solve this, and you can solve it under section 24H of the Fines Act, and that is a very specific section. The General Manager has several times denied this. I've written to her 3 times. She is getting very bad advice. Let me read it to you. It's only a few lines, but it's absolutely critical. Section 24H.
Mr. Plum, could I ask you to be careful with your criticisms? The staff have no opportunity to rebut anything you say.
Well, I heard the General Manager a few minutes ago.
Could I ask you to be careful with your criticisms?
Okay, I shall. Thank you. 24H. Agency may review a decision on its own motion. This is from the Fines Act 1996. Nothing in this division limits the power of a reviewing agency to review a decision to issue a penalty notice or withdraw a penalty notice on its own motion. 2, if a reviewing agency withdraws a penalty notice on its own motion after the amount under the penalty notice or a penalty reminder notice in respect of the offence to which the penalty notice relates has been paid, no person is liable to any further proceedings for the alleged offence. In plain English, your fine is refunded and your demerit points are cancelled. Now, you've got 80 people potentially that have been unfairly and unjustly fined because council didn't do its job properly. Yes, technically we're in breach, but really fair, justice, there's no fairness in this. We're asking for just a little bit of common sense and compassion. And I've had a question from a councillor. Well, what about everybody else? How can we deal with them? Well, there are two really good ways to deal with that. First one, and I'm very brief, you can advertise in the local paper and call for people who have received a fine to make a submission to you. Or two, very easily from your records, you could send out 80 letters to each of those fined with a questionnaire from which you could determine whether you think their fine should be withdrawn. But I do beg you tonight to withdraw my fine and Ms Potty's fine, because if it's not withdrawn, I face a community work order because I am on a single aged pension with no assets whatsoever after a lifetime of community service. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Plum. Thank you for your suggestions. Please stay with us just for a moment. Councillor Sanderson has a question.
Thank you, Mr Plum. It's not really a question, but I'd just like to thank you for your extended community service to this community and for your enlightenment of me on this issue. And thank you for your research and giving me and through me the council the benefit of that research. I'll speak further about it later, but thank you kindly.
I have written to every councillor today and also with much of the same information on the 23rd of September. I do hope you've read them.
We have another question from Councillor Crasso.
But just to clarify for me, you're saying that you feel that the spot is safe and shouldn't be a no stopping zone, or that you would like your fine removed even though you were parked in a no stopping? I just need to establish, are you suggesting we review that spot to make it a parking spot? Or?
I'm saying both. It is not particularly dangerous, but it's fallen in this general category of, it's somewhere near a school, it's an intersection, we need to regard it as a safety hazard. But by comparison, it's not. Just down the road at the close, you have no parking signs within 6 or 7 metres of the intersection. 6 or 7 metres. And in this particular case, view lines are fine. As a responsible driver of 40 years with not a demerit point on my record, I would not have parked there if I believed for a moment it wasn't a legitimate parking spot.
Thank you.
Councillors, any further questions? Thank you, Mr Plum.
Thank you.
Would you like to take the water back to the seat?
Thank you. We wouldn't want to get mixed up.
Oh no, just because I thought you might be thirsty after all that talking.
Thank you.
So, councillors, we have a recommendation on page 11, and it's recommendation of the minutes and recommendation of local traffic will be adopted. Move Councillor Collins, seconded Councillor Crasso. Councillor Collins.
Let's just move.
No further discussion required. I'll put the motion. Those in favour?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose an amendment. Sorry.
Okay, let's go back again. We've got a mover and a seconder. Councillor Collins, Councillor Miles. Councillor Crasso has an amendment.
Councillor Collins, Councillor.
Oh, you're the seconder, were you?
Yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Crasso, you've accepted this motion, now you want to amend it.
Oh, I see.
That's fine.
You seconded the motion, now you want to amend it, is that correct?
Yeah, I wanted to give an amendment.
I think you've seconded it as it is.
Okay.
So, Councillor Collins, he doesn't want to speak to it? No need to speak to it? Councillor Sanderson?
I'll speak against? This motion, Mr Mayor. Again, I thank Mr Plum for bringing this matter to our attention. I'm in a difficult situation. I mean, I've pointed out the problems that there were with the council's process. I believe there are problems there. I'm sure that we need to be careful how we handle this. I mean, the Act is very clear that there is a right of appeal. We have to be very careful how we handle that. If I were advising council on the matter, I'd be saying that if there is an appeal received, you should be responding to it in some way. But I really understand the process by which you have to deal with these matters. The other thing I'd say is that whilst I have a great deal of empathy for those who have been booked in the circumstances, as a student of law, I have great respect for the separation of powers, so I'm not going to engage in the debate. But it is purely an administrative matter. It's an administrative process to issue the ticket. The first rights of appeal are administrative and the final one's judicial. So I don't think council as a third tier of government should be entering into that. The other point I'd like to make about this report is I find it incredibly weak. It doesn't have all of the backup information that we required. I asked questions about one of the recommendations before it on Friday. I received them this afternoon. I asked more questions about it this morning. I received those this afternoon. There wasn't simply time to go through it. There's still outstanding information that isn't available. That information being the consultation process that we went to over the high school. I never cited that. We went to some trouble to do that consultation process, and we derived no benefit from it. So I've got a great deal of problems with the way this committee operates. So I will be voting against the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for the recommendation? Against the recommendation? For the recommendation?
I'm going to speak towards the recommendation, and I'd like to also perhaps include an amendment to the recommendation that in relation to 3.4, that an item 6 be added. And this will have to be added to not the minutes, obviously, but to the item itself. That council support RIDE to investigate movement and place opportunities with Transport for New South Wales and with planning to ensure a place-led project. Now, it's my understanding from Councillor Crastoy that the RMS, while obviously heavily engaged in all of this, is actually Transport for New South Wales and planning are taking over a lot more of these issues around placemaking. Is that correct? And so I think it's important that we include those agencies in any placemaking initiatives that we do in this area. And it's simply just adding those agencies to the engagement process that we are going to have as part of the Oronia Park Road.
Just give us a moment, we'll see if we can capture your note.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Just on procedure?
Sure.
Because this is a minutes of the meeting, is this business arising, or is it right to actually amend the minutes?
We don't amend the minutes, but we make a note in the. So as well as the recommendation, we make a note. Is that okay with you, Councillor Collins? That's what we'll do.
So just
we don't amend the minutes.
It just comes down.
Can I get a point of clarification following on from Councillor Collins? Council is approving what's in here.
Yeah.
And so therefore it is entitled to make changes, but within the motion that's been put to receive a note, not to change the minutes. They stand, but we're entitled to vary those recommendations.
Is that different to what I just said?
Sorry?
Is that different to what I just said?
No. Probably not, but I just wanted clarification, but that's the way I understood it.
Thank you for the...
Does anyone else want to say the same thing?
I appreciate your support. Okay. I thought I got it wrong. So let's make sure, Councillor McLaughlin, we've got the words correct.
So I'll just repeat it again for the minute taker. That council support RIDE to investigate movement and place opportunities with Transport for New South Wales and with planning to ensure...
Hold on just one moment, please. Okay.
To support RIDE to investigate movement and place opportunities with Transport for New South Wales and with planning. To ensure a place-led project.
Capital P, planning.
Yeah, capital P, place-led project.
Why is that a proper noun?
Oh, sorry, planning.
Department of Planning.
Yeah, with the Department of Planning. To ensure a place-led, that's place-led, yeah. Project for Baronia Park.
Okay, could I ask you to review those words again, please, councillor?
Baronia Park, yeah, I need a second.
Thanks, mate.
So I just can't quite see it at the moment. Is that correct, councillor?
Yes, that's correct.
Councillor Collins, you're the mover of the motion. Do you?
I mean, I actually, to be perfectly honest, I don't understand what it means.
Okay. Could you explain further what it means?
I might get the seconder to speak to the motion, if that's all right, to the amendment, if that's all right.
And can I maybe ask a question also? Given that Wright had done the same motion on the other side, do you see? I'm happy to just let it. Is this going to one of those motions that won't actually mean anything? We can just do it and.
Okay. So the first question. Let's deal with your first question, if you mind, Councillor Crasswell. Can you help explain what this means?
Yes, I can. Mr. Mayor, through you. At the Local Government of New South Wales conference that most of us attended the other week, Councillor Sanderson and I went to a workshop on movement in place,
Yes.
where they talked about Transport for New South Wales and the Department of Planning taking a movement in place approach to how we design our roads and village infrastructure. And I spoke with one of the lead engagement officers afterwards, and she suggested that whenever we do have projects we're working on in our community, such as the issue we had on Pittwater Road, that we engage with Transport for New South Wales and the Department of Planning, because they are very much part of the movement in place. So I'm just suggesting that perhaps when this traffic committee took place, that information might not have been available because it was quite new at the conference, and I think that as a council we need to be on the front foot in taking advantage of the way the state is heading.
Sure.
And how they, yeah.
Okay. So, Councillor McLaughlin, is that your understanding too?
That's my understanding.
So, Councillor.
No, Councillor had explained that to me prior.
Right, no, that's right.
We
So,
only had half a coffee.
Well, we don't even have a coffee, that's fine.
And no scotch.
thank you, Councillor. So, Councillor Collins,
Yeah.
are you happy with that?
No.
Is the seconder happy with that too? Councillor Crasso was the seconder. So, any further discussion needed, councillors? I'll put the motion.
Before you do that, you need to bring down
Yeah, we're
the
just doing that now.
minutes thing
Yeah.
as well.
Taking care of that.
Otherwise, they won't be included in the motion.
Thank you.
Oh, that's true.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, would you turn the sound up? We can hardly hear a word back here.
From what, me?
No, from the councils and staff.
All right, so we don't have microphones on the table to project the voices, and actually at this point we're in debate, but you will be able to see the debate on the recording.
Up here, so we don't know what the outcomes
Yes,
are.
sir. Yes, sir. That might be true. We may have to increase it in the future. Thanks for the advice. So, is that clear now?
Yes.
I might wait for councillor, the mover of the motion to return, if you don't mind, with your agreement. Councillors, if you don't mind. Everybody in favour?
Yep.
Any minute now.
Just to assist the gallery, you might drag the little symbol on the right hand across to the plus. It will increase the font.
Let's not complicate things.
No, down the bottom. No, it's just
Gets it right.
So, if there's no further discussion, I'll put the recommendation with the amendment. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Oh, you're against?
Yep.
Sorry, councillor Sanderson is against.
Mr. Mayor.
3.1. So I think we go back to 3.1. Is that correct?
3.4.
3.4. It's a notice of motion to address resident safety in Prince Edward Street. Councillor Miles, second.
Can I just
Councillor
ask questions to me?
Yes.
We do have residents here. I know they haven't filled their forms out. I'm not wondering whether if they do want to speak to the motion that you give them the opportunity to.
I'll second that.
Well, normally, if I might just say, I'm happy to support what you said. We ask people who want to speak to put in their request before lunchtime on the day. And there's a few reasons we do that. So if I could ask in the future that you try to comply with that. How many people wish to speak on this?
If any.
If any. It's really just to support it.
So is there one person who will speak on everybody's behalf?
Okay. Unless you want me to say something. Unless you want me to say something.
All right, could you join us? Thank you. And Bob, could you give us your name again, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Your name, please?
Bob Fossard, number 9 Prince Edward Street.
Bob Fossard, number 9.
And I guess a number of you are probably already aware that there was about 3 weeks ago a very nasty accident in our street, which is a symptom of the danger that Prince Edward residents face every day, with the increase in traffic, the speed of the traffic, and the difficulty in residents travelling safely and walking across the street or around the street. It's really a very serious situation. The accident in particular, I think you might have a photograph there, of a car that was travelling down from the Manning Road direction up towards Tarban Crescent, and it ran into the back of a Holden station wagon, and it tipped over on its back, and it was sitting up there on the roof with the wheels vertical, and there was a P-plate driver in that car, and luckily she was able to be removed without too much injury. But it's a symptom of the danger that we face in Prince Edward Street on an ongoing basis, and it's something that I would really request council to have a look at again, and look at the options that we've previously provided, and see if any of those options are satisfactory to council. We appreciate the work that's been done to date and the fact that we've got 2 speed humps, but unfortunately with the modern cars these days, the speed humps don't seem to slow down cars, some of the cars greatly, particularly the SUVs and the like. But I just really, and we all would request that council look again at the traffic situation in Prince Edward Street, and that accident is just one example of a number of that have occurred over the years, particularly at where Prince Edward Street joins Manning Road. There's been a number of accidents there and collisions. And the other thing that we brought up too on a number of occasions is the danger to the residents in the Blandeville Court facility, and the fact that there's no easy way for them to and to go up to Gladesville Shopping Centre, other than crossing a very busy Manning Road, Prince Edward Street intersection, and that needs to be part of council's investigation. And we desperately ask for you as councillors to look at the situation again, because it's not going to get better; it's going to get worse. So thank you very much.
I have a couple of questions, if you might. We did do a report on this some time ago, didn't we? And did that report show that the speeds were lower and there were fewer cars on the road? Is that correct? Or did I misunderstand that?
Well,
speeds were lower and there were fewer cars using the road.
But the fact is that we are having accidents, and that one 3 weeks ago was a prime example. And there's the issue of the Blandville Court residents still remains.
Sure.
And we can see with all the units going up now that there is going to be an increase. While in past records may show a reduction in traffic, there's no doubt about it, there's going to be an increase in traffic over the next few years. And the road runners are still there, and they're going to increase. So that numbers of traffic is condensed into those peak hour periods, and that's a real issue for our young people and those attending school and those preschoolers we have a lot of families in our street, which is probably a bit different to some of the other streets in Hunters Hill.
Okay, thank you. Councillors, any further questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there's a recommendation there on page 4. Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Collins. Councillor Miles.
Mr. Mayor, obviously in light of this recent incident, which is just one of many that occur both on the Victoria Road and Manning Road and Prince Edward intersection, I think we really need to relook at this, and I think particularly do what it is that I think that a lot of us wanted to do in that first iteration of the plan, which is to make the access points into Prince Edward Street and further down onto Tarban Street, Tarban Street, sorry, residents only. This is a classic rat run. It is obviously a problem associated with people coming off Victoria Road trying to rat run through to Pittwater Road. It's not something that I think anyone here would want on their street. I think it's something that we obviously need to address. It's not a normal it is not normal for a vehicle to be overturned on its roof in a pedestrian street. I mean, in many other circumstances, we were lucky that there was no one walking a dog late at night, or children out at night, or any iteration of pedestrian activity that could happen on a suburban street like this. When someone came fanging down that road at a speed that allowed them to clip a car and flip that car on its roof, obviously something needs to be done. This poses solutions that I think should have been done at the time, which is to end what is an obvious rat run. I think that the first thing that council needs to do, and what is completely within our power, is to close Prince Edward Street and Tarban Street off from rat runners and make them residents only streets, and to then engage with the state government to deal with what is obviously a situation that's not working in the turn off from Victoria Road onto Manning Road and then running into Prince Edward Street.
Thank you, Councillor. Are you wishing to speak against? Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I share Councillor Miles' sentiments. Regrettably, I don't think the motion is the right way to go. We've had a report on this before, and the report, I think, clearly pointed out that if you close one road off, the problem moves down to the next, and you close the next one off, moves down to the next, and so on. I have huge sympathy for the people in the Prince Edward Street. So what I would foreshadow, I have an alternate motion that will achieve the same. It will draw on the old report, and it will also suggest a solution in clearer terms than you have put in your motion. At the same time, it will provide a solution that will assist, or the start of a process by which we can derive a solution.
Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you.
Could you tell us what your alternate motion is, please?
Yes,
and I'll give you a chance to speak to it.
Okay.
Who's got copies?
I've made a copy available to
Is that what this is?
to staff.
Sorry, excuse me, Councillor. Is that what this
That's
is?
one. You can hand that around if you like. So what I propose is that.
Do we have a copy of that motion we can bring up on the screen? Okay, Councillor Sanderson, I believe it's up on the screen at the moment, is that correct? I believe it's on the screen at the moment, is that correct?
Good. Yes, that's right. No, it's the earlier one than that I think we'll run with if we can. There's one I sent through at an earlier time.
So this is the latest what you sent?
No, I want to run with the earlier one if I could.
Don't think we've got it.
Anyway, so I'll read the motion in the meantime. That in view of recent accidents, 1, Council requests that Headway Traffic and Transport Proprietary Limited review their early report concerning the possible partial closure of Prince Edward Street and advise if there are other viable solutions to reduce rat running in this and other nearby residential streets. 2, Council commenced discussions with Transport for New South Wales regarding the prospect of A, stopping right-hand turns from Victoria Road into Manning Road, B, stopping all vehicle exits from Manning Road into Victoria Road, C, extending the Victoria Road footpath and curb from the east part way across Manning Road to narrow the distance pedestrians need to walk across Manning Road, which at this point would then only carry traffic turning left from Victoria Road, and D, exempting emergency vehicles from these restrictions as appropriate. 3, in the event of a viable solution being identified, consult with affected residents and identify sources of funding to perform any required work.
Okay. Would you like to have a seat just for a moment while we catch up on the screen, please? Won't be long. Do you have a spare copy I could have a look at? Thank you.
It's got nothing to do with traffic, it's safe.
Most of the rest of that should be the same as the one you had before.
Has everybody read the new motion? Does everybody feel that they've had time to absorb it? Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. I think the problem with the original motion that Councillor Miles and Councillor Collins put forward is it just sort of ignores the fact that Council has already gone to a lot of trouble to engage a consultant and produce a very detailed report. As I was saying earlier, that report acknowledges the fact that if you close one road, you move the problem up to the next, you close the next one, you move the problem up to the next, and so on. What I'm suggesting is we just ask the traffic consultant to look at his report and suggest if there are any solutions that he may have missed. I think that's the sensible way to go. Now, if there aren't, I think then we look at the next process, and the next process should be as I had trouble understanding Councillor Miles and Councillor Cogg's motion, but I think the intent was that we look at closing the median strip on Victoria Road to prevent right-hand turns into the top of Manning Road. There's also a safety issue, as we've heard from the speakers, about people crossing Manning Road, particularly the residents of Blenheim Court, and by narrowing that down and just having the only normal source of traffic into the top of Manning Road being traffic turning left from Victoria Road, I think that's going to limit the traffic not just to Prince Edward Street, it will also limit it to the other streets in the area, including Tarban Street, Reserve Road and Mary Street. So I think this is a far more sensible approach to take. And the third point of it is just simply that we, if there is a viable solution come out of this process, that then we do our consultation and everyone has the opportunity to have their input on it.
Is there anybody wishing to speak against the amendment? Councillor Collins, I think first.
Thank you. I just want to say a couple of things. I'm not sure when council staff received this additional amendment, but I don't want us to see us go back to a time when we would have alternate motions like this just placed on the table for us to, having never seen them before. Yeah, well, I think this happened a couple of times tonight. Councillor Sanderson did it quite often in the past and has stopped doing it, so I don't want to encourage this kind of making policy on the fly. If there's a specific aspect of the motion already on the table, then let's engage and have that discussion. But having just seen this motion, and I'm not sure if anyone else has seen it or it's just been staggered, but this motion of yours, Councillor Sanderson, doesn't offer solutions. It just seems to kick the can down the road and not actually look at a viable option. The motion we brought here has an outcome, has a viable plan. If there's an aspect of it that you wish to amend or discuss, let's keep it to the motion on the table, and let's not have this policy on the fly, because I don't think it's conducive to good decisions.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to speak for the alternate motion?
I've just got a question, if I could, just while I'm considering it.
Councillor Lachlan?
There used to be buses, but they're no longer buses now.
Oh, there's still lots of buses.
2 in the morning.
Yeah, and they block the whole road because everyone parks out the sides of the street, so you can't get anything else down there.
Sorry.
I'm just wondering how that affects this motion.
I believe that they only run in one direction, so that it will have no impact on the buses.
All right, does that answer your question?
Yes, that answers my question.
Councillor Cresswell?
I also have a question. We're currently discussing this amendment, right?
We are.
But it actually relates to both of them.
No, we took the amendment, yeah.
Sure, but through you, Mr Mayor, the General Manager, I just wanted some clarification, because a similar motion came to Council brought by Councillor Sanderson a while ago, and at the end of that I recall that we took the consultant's report on his expert advice, but we also, I think it was me, but regardless, we also undertook to address the safety issue regardless, and we called join in if I'm wrong, but we called a public meeting. The residents of Prince Edward Street gave us their valuable time, and we spent quite a while listening to some ideas and concerns, and so I'm just curious whether I missed the report on that public meeting or whether any actions came out of that, because that was kind of, although I know it's been a while, I sort of thought that there were actions going to be in place after that public meeting, and I'm sure some of the residents did too.
There was, through you, Mayor, there was a workshop of all the residents. It dragged out all the issues. From memory, there were actions, and one of the actions was to write to the local police and highlight the issue of cars going down the street in a fast motion. There was other actions to be reviewed in due course through the Traffic Committee with regard to line marking and the like, from memory. So they were the actions that came out of that workshop.
Thank you.
And I think there was a particular car that travelled down the road at high speed, and we knew who that person was, and I think we were going to have someone look at it.
And we did write to the police asking to patrol the area, and the rangers do patrol the area as well, as far as there was cars parking across driveways as well.
Does that answer your question?
It does.
So we've had Councillor Sanderson speak for the alternate motion. Anybody wishing to speak against? Councillor Miles.
Mr Mayor, yes, I agree with Councillor Sanderson that we can commence discussions with Transport for New South Wales. But what this motion does is obfuscate our duty to look after the safety of residents, and that's the core component of this motion. Let's do what we can do with our local roads, council roads, in making them residents only. Now, if you are talking about moving the rat run down the road, no rat runner is going to go all the way down Manning Road, all the way to Mary Street, turn left and go down that way to Pittwater Road, because it doesn't make sense. It's not a rat run, it doesn't cut time off. You may as well go up to Pittwater Road and turn. That's the whole point. That's the whole point of this exercise, is that the ability of rat runners to get down to Prince Edward Street is the reason that the cut time off is the reason that they take that route. I agree with you. We should be engaging with state government to make sure that right-hand turn off of Victoria Road doesn't happen anymore. No complaints from me there. What I have a problem with is that this motion draws out our capacity to do anything to alleviate the obvious dangers that are happening in the street. Now, it isn't even if there was a lessening of numbers, I don't recall that being the case. There was talk about the lessening of speed as a result of the speed humps. But even if there was a lessening of speed and a lessening of numbers of cars, there will be more cars. There is more development down the road. But at the end of the day, this isn't a capacity of the road issue. This is an issue of safety. And there is obviously a situation in Prince Edward Street that is unsafe. And we as a council have to deal with this. If someone had been hit and killed here, and we had months ago not done something at council, then how would have we all felt? Seriously, think about that. If someone had died in this incident that happened 3 weeks ago, this is the first general meeting that has happened since this incident occurred. Had someone got hit and killed as a result of this accident, how would you have felt as a councillor, as someone who had the opportunity to stand up and do something about the traffic at Prince Edward Street and you didn't do it? Because we haven't done anything on Prince Edward Street and we need to do something now.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for? Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor. I think time for action on this was back 18 months ago when myself and Councillor Sanderson moved a motion to have the street partially blocked. Councillor Miles talks about 3 weeks ago. We put the issue 18 months ago, and I believe it should have been dealt with then. Council rejected it after going through a process. And if we're going to adopt these requirements of no right-hand turn or of developing the immediate plan for residents only, surely we have to go through a process, which is what Councillor Sanderson is proposing in one. You can't just do this, you have to go through a process. And we went through a process before and Council rejected the outcomes of that process. We had consultation with the community. I was at that workshop, so was Councillor Crassoy and Councillor Sanderson. We heard the residents and what they required. But there were some competing views there in terms of people that didn't live in that street didn't want certain action. So you can't just make an ambient claim that you're going to make it residents only. I support it, but that won't happen until we go through a process. And if we go through the same process we went last time, and council comes up with its rejection of a solution, then we're just spinning our wheels. I think 2 and 3 are really important, but I think you can't prescribe the outcome. You have to ask what the options are, and we'll have to go through a consultation process. So it's not an easy step just to say you're going to do X, Y, and Z. There's a process to be gone through. We went through it before. We had a solution which I think is superior to what's been talked about here, but council did not act on it. So I don't see Councillor Miles' point that if we don't do it today, then we'll have blood on our hands. Council rejected it 18 months ago. Councillor Sanderson and I were the proponents of what I believe is a much better solution than what's being offered here.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against the alternate motion? For? So I'll put the motion, the alternate motion. So let me just go back and see where we started again. So, is everyone clear on what the alternate motion is? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's lost. Back to the original motion. Any further discussion required, councillors?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to it.
Councillor Crassell?
Thank you. I do it with a little sadness because far too long has passed on this issue, and I guess it's been a busy year at council and there's been a lot going on, and I guess perhaps all of us didn't jump up and down sooner to follow up on the actions from that public meeting, many of which I thought were good, and had they been in practice for a while, perhaps we may still have a motion here because perhaps some of those outcomes and recommendations may not have worked, but perhaps some of them might have. But here we are, and I think too much time has gone, and even in the year that I've lived in Sunnyside Street, I've watched the traffic grow on Prince Edward. The way people park is definitely contributing to the sense of danger and poor visibility in the street. That's by the by. I think that it's a very prescriptive motion, but I'm going to support it because I want to see this moving along. When council develops this plan, I'm sure they are going to refer back to the expert advice that we received over a year ago now, I think. And when they develop a plan, it will have to go to community consultation. And so as part of that process, everyone will have the opportunity to comment. So while I'm not thrilled with the fact that it's so prescriptive, I don't want to muck around with more amendments and more alternatives. I think we just need to get it underway and let the community speak from here with the support of council and with the support of state bodies.
Anybody wishing to speak against? For? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Councillor Sanderson against. Everyone else for. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, residents. Thanks for coming. 3.5. Notice of motion to address Woolwich Farms. Moved Councillor Miles, seconded Councillor Collins. Councillor Miles.
On to more pleasant things. I just wanted to, it's one of those bite-sized pieces that I think we can add to the property strategy. Again, reiterating what I said in the hall before, I think that we have to do this in a logical way that doesn't overwhelm staff, because I don't want to lump all the properties that I think are not performing as well as they probably should have been. The Woolwich Baths, we're coming up to summer, reeks of opportunity for council. It's a asset that has cost us a lot in maintenance in the past. It's an underutilised asset. It's a fairly inaccessible asset. It's an asset that a lot of people that are locals or local people or regional people don't know about. This motion essentially refers the baths to the property committee to see how we can improve the facility as it is and look at potential revenue options for the baths. That may include food and beverage licensing, that may include many iterations of different things. But I think it's worth looking at because I think that for your low cost, high yield or high return property, I think that the baths are a asset that sit on our books that is a high maintenance asset and something that we could derive revenue out of quite quickly with fairly insubstantial investment or third-party investment, which I'd like to explore perhaps as part of an EOI process. And I know the General Manager and I have discussed that before, so I'd just like to refer that to the Property Committee just so that we can make those explorations.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against? For?
I'll just
Councillor Collins.
briefly say, sounds like it's going to get support, which is fantastic. I think we have a great opportunity to activate a neglected space down there, I think having council not really being able to, with so many things to do, I think potentially a private operator might be a good solution. But anyway, that's something for the property committee to decide, and I think it's good that we start, continue to feed these opportunities to the property committee to maximise the benefit.
Thank you, Councillor.
Just a quick question, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councillor Crasso has a question.
Thank you to the General Manager. From you. If we refer this to the Property Committee, is it something that would move on to the agenda, or is it something that consultant money would already need to be pressed into for a feasibility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think the first stage is to draw on the collective wisdom of the Property Advisory Committee and see what their thoughts are.
Thank you.
Any further discussion required, councillors? Right reply needed? I'll put the motion. Those in favour? Against? That's unanimous. Thank you. 3.6, notice of motion seeking opportunities to support council's strategic goals around sustainability and the circular economy. Councillor Crasso and seconded Councillor McLaughlin. Can you explain what that means, Councillor Crasso?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I won't go on too long. I'm sure you've all had time to read the motion and do your research on what circular economy is. The reason I'm bringing this motion to council is that I would like us to formally show leadership to the community and to support the General Manager and council senior staff to explore opportunities for us to take advantage, really, of state government and LG New South Wales initiatives to innovate around how we manage our waste and our recycling in particular, but actually around a lot of things. And that's why the motion is quite open and loose. So for those of us who were sitting in at the New South Wales conference about the Circular Economy Initiative from LG New South Wales, they're going to be supporting councils and advocating to the state government. It's not just about being more sustainable in the way you do business, it's actually about drawing attention to our tiny suburb as potentially an opportunity to pilot or to partner with universities and business. For example, at the New South Wales conference, Lismore Council not so long ago spoke about a project they developed in a partnership to crush glass back into sand, which they now sell to industry as road and footpath So we don't have a glass crushing site here, but we do have a new library service that we're about to start in the neighbourhood, and we're going to have a little hub that we might even throw the word innovation near. So I'm just inviting Council to support the General Manager and to send a message to our community that we are attempting, in the way we do business, to engage with everything that's on the table from every level of government. We want people to look at our community and see us showing leadership. And I don't want to throw the word climate change in there, but it was certainly raised a lot at the LG New South Wales conference. But something that Townsville Council said at the placemaking conference I was at last week was, you don't talk about climate change by talking about climate change. You talk about climate change by showing. And so that's all really I'm hoping this motion will do. Certainly other councils that were at the two conferences I've been at in the last few weeks are really doing some amazing stuff, and I think we need a bite of the cherry. We want to attract some grant funding. We want universities to seek us out and use us for pilots. We're nice and small, so it's easy for them to do.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. If I might just point out to you, we're heading towards 11 o'clock pretty quickly, 20 minutes quickly. So I just, any further discussion required on this motion? Councillor Collins?
Against it. Look, honestly, I read this and I think it looks more like a synopsis for an episode of Utopia. This is completely empty. It offers nothing. We look at number one. General Manager provide a report to Council outlining opportunities, if any, for partnerships and projects. Now, if you've got some ideas, let's put them on the table. Let's not pass a motion to say, ask the council staff to come up with ideas, because if they come up with them, they're going to do that anyway. Now, circular economy is something that we've looked at as NESROC. Well, those last meeting minutes, have they come before council yet? Was that the last?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Look, at the end of the day, this report, and can I question through you, Mr. Mayor, General Manager, what this report would cost to produce?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. I think, given the work that's happening through NESROC and LG New South Wales, it's something that we could achieve in-house. So I don't believe we would need any consultancies. That's the question.
But at council time, though? And are you doing this anyway?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. At the most recent General Managers meeting, NESROC General Managers meeting, waste and reframing waste as a resource was a hot topic, and looking at how we do that. And one of the things that is coming to the forefront is that concept of the circular economy and how we rethink our waste as a resource. So it's an opportunity to tie in some of the work that NESROC are doing, a bit of the work that LG New South Wales is doing, and there's quite a bit of innovation happening in the university sector as well.
And you're currently dealing with universities at the moment, are you?
Through Mr. Mayor, through NESROC and through LG New South Wales, we've had different universities present what they're doing, and some of those could present opportunities for us. But again, that needs to be explored.
Fantastic. All right, well, this has all been done anyway. So I will trust that it's been done. If anyone's got any specific ideas, I think that should by all means brought up. But this is just yet another council report that is going to tie council staff down to doing something that they're already doing. So I don't support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak for?
Yes, I will speak for it, thank you.
Councillor.
Just to address the issue about this is something that's already been done. We saw a report earlier in the evening that supported something that's already been done, and we all supported it as well. That was the T Corp one. But as far as this is concerned, this motion supports the GM and the council. I'll just step back. We had a very interesting presentation earlier in the evening before the council meeting on the strategic direction that our GM was wanting this council to head in, and it absolutely addressed all of the issues that are in, or some of the issues that are in this report. What this motion does is it supports the work that the council is already doing, but it also flags in a public way and to the public that we support these kinds of initiatives. This might all be happening behind the scenes, but as a council we're supporting it. What it also does, and I think the General Manager put this very succinctly when she said that what it flags is that we may be small and people think, well, we can't do things, but, you know, just because we are small, we can actually do things. And so that means that we can be part of pilot programs, we can get funding for particular for particular projects because we are an innovation, we can be seen as an innovation incubator. We are a very easy incubator for people to want to pilot with. And that attracts funding as well for that kind of process. So there's a lot in this. This flags to our public that we are absolutely wanting to do all of those things. We've had that presentation from the General Manager earlier in the evening, but that wasn't a public presentation. And we're simply supporting the ongoing work in this area, and I think this is very exciting work, and I think there's a lot of scope for us to get a lot of financial benefit from it as we move forward.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against?
Not against, but
all right.
Perhaps some comments. I have I have issues with the words "if any," and I think that this motion, if it does go through, does need to be tightened up, because I think you're setting yourself up for a fall if you put "if any" opportunities. I just think that that's obviously there are opportunities. We're working with some organisations at the moment. As I understand it, some universities have expressed the desire to work with us in this space. I have a problem with the words "if any" being put into a motion like this. I also think that you know, when it's said that we work well with the other tiers of government, on a political level, I don't think we do. I think we work very poorly with other levels of government. I think the staff try to work very closely with state and federal governments, but I think on a political level, we spend a lot of time complaining and not partnering with the state and federal governments. I think that has to be said, because the way that we interact with state and federal governments compared to other councils is quite stark, and always has been in my time on council. So I have no problems with the overall objectives of the motion. I would remove "if any." I think that's a bit of an affront to the sort of what the motion's trying to get to. And I would say that if it is a desire of ours to work more closely with other tiers of government, then we've got a long way to go.
I think it's a good suggestion, Councillor Miles, you make. Councillor Truss, are you happy to drop out those two words? Yep. Anybody wishing to speak further on this motion? I point out to you we've got 10 minutes to 11 o'clock. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak in support of the motion. I think it's very important that Hunters Hill Council make it clear to its community where it stands on important issues such as this. For those that attended the local government conference sessions, they would be well aware of the importance that's placed on this by both LG New South Wales and the vast array of councils that were present. So it's a no-brainer, but it's something that we need to articulate to our community, that we're prepared to engage with, prepared to look for opportunities and partnership and pilot. I would also add in here, and one of the strong things that came out of the conference for me, listening to those sessions both in Canberra and at Liverpool, is that Council also has an obligation to use those products. It's one thing to promote a circular economy, but we have to start using the products from the circular economy within our day-to-day business. Road materials, whatever. There's a range of current products that need our support. So not only do we need to tell our community that we engage and support on this? But we also need to be mindful that we need to be a purchaser of the outcomes of the circular economy.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody wishing to speak against? For? I'd like to speak for it. I think we do have some opportunities. There are university projects at the moment. General Manager and I went to a conference probably 10 months ago, and we looked at some products for University of New South Wales, and I think they're something we could possibly use in some of the things we're doing in the future. So I see a real application, of course, as long as it's cost effective. So right to reply, Councillor Crasso.
Thank you, Councillor Collins, for pointing out the general nature of this motion. It's intended to be that way. Many months ago, I was mulling over the idea of piloting a sustainable Gladesville project that gets all of the hairdressing salons to get together and learn about sustainable salon solutions, where they recycle their chemicals, their foil, everything they do. Get all of the cafes together to use one brand of coffee cup that everyone in the community can share or worship. Get the cafes together to encourage people to actually just sit down and have a coffee instead of getting it in a takeaway cup. Or get the cafes to host community talks to get people to engage stronger in their community. All of these, not only are they big about community building, but they're also about developing a sense of ownership of our responsibility to our own future and to the future of the planet by thinking locally, well, thinking globally, but acting on a local level. So, you know, I have plenty of ideas. I'd like to see the water from under the Three Beans building being, instead of pumped into the gutter and down the street, pumped up to irrigate Fig Tree Park. I'd like to see all of that. And the hope of this motion is that Council is given our support and in fact our encouragement to think that way in what they bring back to us. Townsville Council, they've given all of their institutions permission. They partner with James Cook University to develop a biological digester, like a kombucha, that they spray on their very hard earth, and it makes the soil more permeable to retain rainwater better. Just a clever thing that they did with James Cook University. It solved a problem for them and it retains their water. They also partnered with a developer in the area to build the first suburb housing development in Australia, where all the houses in it have Tesla battery walls and power supplies for electric cars. The whole suburb is irrigated on bore water and planted sensitively. There's all sorts of things that this motion is inviting our General Manager and senior staff to think about with our support. So I'm very excited that it looks like this motion will get up, and I think the community will be excited too. We don't need a climate emergency declaration, we just need action on a local level to care more about our place on the planet.
Thank you, Councillor. Well said. I'll put the motion. Those in favour, against, that's Councillor Collins against, everybody else is in favour.
I'd like to move everything as a block.
Yes, I'd like that too. 4.4, could I ask you just to work with me? 4.4, could you have a look at that?
Everything.
Any concerns? 4.5, any concerns?
4.3, Mr. Mayor.
4.3.
Yeah, problems with it.
Yeah.
No, it's just saying is included.
4.3, we can do that too?
Yep.
So 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, legal matters. 4.9, minutes of Gladesville Main Street. 4.10, minutes of Hunters Hill Main Street again. 4.11, the minutes of the Conservation Advisory Panel. 4.12 is a CAP meeting.
Can I speak?
All right, so if I understand correctly, we're going to move 4.3 through to 4.11.
Yep.
Move Councillor Collins, seconded Councillor Crassoy. All in favour, that's carried. 4.12, Councillor Williams.
Yes, Mr Mayor, I think there's been an additional paper provided that
There has
covers the duplication of...
Does everybody have that?
Yes. Yeah, it's been handed and circulated around. I just wanted to make sure that that was noted and the report be received and noted. I also bring to Council's attention in the report 4.2, 1 to 3 Ride Road, Hunters Hill, the panel discussed that at some length and was of the view that Council needs to strengthen its guidelines and process in relation to heritage items. Make sure that we clearly articulate what is expected to retain both the context, the fabric and the history of the location. We've seen recent examples, over several years, examples where buildings have been changed and in my mind lost to their heritage significance, and what CAP is looking at doing is providing some suggestions as to how best we may modify or adapt our processes to better reflect the importance of some of these buildings, to make sure any approvals or development applications are clearly brought within Council's objectives and agenda. So I'm just flagging that that's something that will be coming forward in subsequent CAP meetings.
All right, so if I could just check, make sure I understand, Councillor Williams, where we've got the minutes of the 21st of August meeting. We've just received the minutes of the September 18 meeting.
That's right.
Is that correct? So we're accepting both sets of minutes.
No. Sorry, through you, Mr Mayor, just to clarify, the minutes for the 21st of August were attached to the report in error, so they've now been replaced with the 18th of September minutes.
All right, so we've got the wrong minutes in there.
Yeah.
Business paper that they're being set up.
Okay, good, thank you. So, any further discussion required? All in favour? That's carried unanimous. Councillor, any further business? Any questions without notice? I declare the meeting closed at 10:55 p.m. Thank you, councillors.